of the Falmouth Conservation
find 'em.
Commission. I'd like to acknowledge the Boy Scouts that are here tonight. They've been sentenced to listen to one meeting.
Eagle Scouts.
Welcome, Eagle Scouts, no less.
Eagles,
On their way to being,
Candidates.
on their way to being.
Candidates,
congratulations and good luck on the rest of the journey.
welcome.
Long meeting to sit through.
Let's see, okay, some ground rules at this time. Please silence your electronic devices. If you're gonna hold a private conversation, take it outside. This meeting is being recorded by FCTV. If there's anybody else recording, please identify yourself for the record. If you're here to speak on any matter, and we welcome you to do so, you have to do it from the podium and give your name for the record. First up, other business. Presentation on the Peterson Farm Annual Report.
Everyone, thanks for having us. We're gonna make this short and sweet, but
If you can, sir, I'm sorry, please try to use that microphone.
And tell us who
I
you
know it's
are.
hard, but,
Tell us who you are.
and identify yourself for the record.
yeah. So I'm Simon Thorold,
And I'm Diana Wickman.
Thank you.
and we're going to give you an annual update on Peterson Farm. We've just finished our first year as stewards on the farm. We wanted to get this going. First thing we want to do is acknowledge.
First thing we want to do is fix it. What about that one?
Let's try this. Oh, I think it's just jammed on us.
Technical difficulties. Stand by.
It was a nice picture.
Yeah.
No, what happened?
Let's
Please
try
start
that
with a
again.
good one, just in case.
Let's try that again. Okay, there we go. So we got it. The first thing we want to do is just to say thank you to a bunch of people and organizations that have made this all possible. The 300 Committee certainly has helped us considerably throughout. We've funneled a grant through them. They've been super helpful, organized. A bunch of helpers have been super supportive. The next one on going across is we really like to acknowledge Doug Brown, who's been super helpful in all the building that we've done on the farm. He spent a lot of weekends helping us that he certainly did not need to do. AmeriCorps has been super helpful as well, thanks to Alex, who's here, Alex Zolo, so we're super appreciative of that. The guy in the tractor mowing for us is actually Mike Duffany, whose tractor is back there again. Mike has been awesome as well, giving up his time. We would like to acknowledge about 120 people who have donated over $11,000 through our GoFundMe site to help fund the fencing that we've put on that you will see. And the Island Foundation also stepped in with a gift that helped us get going with that fencing as well. So we want to say a real big thank you to all those people and organizations. Since this is our first one, we want to just introduce ourselves a little bit. And so Peterson Farm is not our day jobs. We actually have other jobs as well. So Diana, why don't you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a senior engineering assistant at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. I moved to the Cape from time in the Air Force about 8 years ago now, and moved to Falmouth actually because of the tenancy at Peterson Farm in March of this year. So.
And I'm Simon Thorold. I'm a biologist in the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. And when I'm not here, I'm often diving and taking photos in coral reefs. So we want to just start really quickly with our philosophy for farming. Again, since this is our first meeting. Our sort of overarching philosophy is one of regenerative agriculture. And by that I mean that we're not interested in merely sustaining what's there. We actually want to build on what's there, restore what's there, recover what's there. And there are some things that go along with that. Rotational grazing is a big thing that we'll do on the farm, and that's the way that we actually build soil carbon. That's how we turn what's pasture land now into carbon, a place where we can actually sequester a ton, literally tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. It's a really great thing. We are very committed to minimizing herbicides and pesticides on the farm. As I said, carbon sequestration is a big deal for us, and the the management approaches that we use are going to help increase the organic carbon content of the soil, but build topsoil as well. That's our goal. And we'll be taking soil samples to document just how well we are doing with that. And what that means, so the bottom line is that we will have meat and wool products produced on the farm that are climate beneficial. And that's one of my favorite graphs on the right-hand side. This has actually just come out, but basically it shows that, as we all know, conventional beef production is actually very bad in terms of CO2, but regenerative grazing is actually the only one of all those, including Impossible Burgers and Beyond Beef. It's the only one that can actually sequester carbon. That is, in fact, not only carbon neutral, it's actually pulling carbon out of the atmosphere into the soils, producing meat that we can, I think, feel really good about. And so that's the overall, that's a philosophy that we have. The other philosophy that we absolutely stick to is end-to-end ethical treatment of animals. So anything happening on the farm is done with the ethical treatment of animals in the forefront of our mind. That includes adhering to what's the Patagonia Wool Standard, which is a standard that the company Patagonia has come up with for all the sheep that they use wool from have to adhere to these standards. It's basically the EU standards for animal welfare. It's way stricter than anything in the US. And the other thing that we're really lucky to have, and this goes to the end-to-end part of it, is that we have Meatworks, a brand new processing facility in Westport that's been designed in conjunction with Temple Grandin to reduce as much as possible the amount of stress on the animals during what is literally the worst day that we have on the farm every year. Okay, so this is actually a much higher resolution if we were to drill into it. This is a friend of mine flew a drone for us to create a high resolution mosaic of Peterson Farm. And so we're going to be talking about the barn field here, the main field here, and the north field at the top end. And actually we're going to be talking a little bit too, right at the very end, about this old pasture here as well. Okay, so what have we achieved in the first year? We're just going to go through these very quickly, but we certainly, in terms of stocking of animals, we now have 30 sheep on the property, 15 ewes, 15 lambs. For those people wondering if there are still lambs on Peterson Farm, yes, they are still there. We have the ewes. That's a number that will be growing as we are on the farm longer and longer. It's still a little bit too little, as you can tell by all the long grass on the farm. We can't actually keep up with the grass production right now. So we're going to have to figure out a balance of exactly where the sweet spot is for that.
We've also picked a diverse group of species that we chose in conjunction with kind of the grass and the plants that were growing at the farm. So we have Scottish blackface, which is the species that Sue kept, or the breed that Sue kept. And then we have some hair sheep called Katahdins, and they're really good for grazing. A lot of the invasives, like autumn olive, they really like, for example, Norway maple, the locust, and plants like that. And then we have some Texel and North Country crosses that are really good for meat production, which help us fund the hay bill in the winter.
So these are our sheep and lambs in the fields.
Our pride and joy.
Behind the fence, our pride and joy. Exactly. The other thing that we had for about 5 months, some of you may have seen the pigs. We had feeder pigs that we used actually for invasive control. They turned out to be really great mechanical rooters up of invasives in one relatively small area of the property. So we've had those for 5 months. They have turned out to be super useful as well. A big part of what we did, in fact, when we went in, we knew that the problems that Sue showed in the last chapter was having with people walking around the property. So what we said is that we would do this, but in order to do it, we would have to put up perimeter fencing around the fields to keep our animals separated from all the dog walkers that now routinely use that area. And so we would like to report back that we've done pretty much exactly what we said we would do in our response to the call. The two of us, with a lot of help, have constructed about 6,000 linear feet of high quality perimeter fencing around those 3 fields, and that's what the funding that we've had has gone towards.
And this is a little different than the fencing Sue had. This is high tensile woven wire. Sue had 3-strand electric. Dogs can't get through this. We've actually seen deer jump it, but otherwise we've been very lucky with predators. And this is a fence that'll last 30 years, you know, not 5 years or 10 years.
Yeah, so, and this is just an example of that here. So the braces and the woven wire and the electric goes along. The only part that's electrified is actually the very top strand that is not actually on this photo. We talked about barn renovation and all the help that we got from Doug Brown, basically turning what was the main barn on your left into what it looks like now on the right. And again, we couldn't have done it without Doug. And so this is still a work in progress, but certainly it's going well. And at this point, we would definitely like to acknowledge the town who has bought all the supplies that went into the barn renovation. We provided all the labor and Doug provided the expertise, but the town actually provided all the supplies that went into doing this work. Invasive plant control is, probably the biggest issue that we're dealing with on the farm. The worst are porcelain berry and black swallowwort that we have not only, unfortunately, around the fences, but are now actually in the fields as well. And so that has proved to be a big battle that will be an ongoing battle probably for as long as we have the farm. But how we've attacked it basically is mechanical removal. We've dug up hundreds of gallons of swallowwort from the fields. So we mow to keep us from losing ground in terms of, so stop them from potting and seeding, and then go in mechanically remove them. That's, we're getting there, but it's a tough job. It's also a good time to put a shout out to the town as well, who had, this is what the farm now looks like when you pull into that parking lot. It used to be, on your right was just a huge overgrown invasive thicket of bittersweet and porcelain berry and black swallowwort, and the town came in, they removed the invasives, and Alex and Mark were actually that they actually led this effort. They've replanted back in natives. We took out that the old fruit stand, replaced it with a kiosk that we're going to have information on. So the parking lot as you walk into Peterson Farm now looks a whole lot better than it did. And as Betsy, it's only going to get better once the natives start growing in, and I think it's going to be really beautiful. And finally, the farm, we actually haven't got a tally, but the farm attracts a lot of visitors. And so I think we had one particularly memorable day on Easter Sunday when we had, I think, 3 ewes were lambing, and we had basically stadium seating with all the people behind watching these poor sheep as they were lambing. So that's great, right? It's great that it's not really a problem. We've had one farm open day, which we got about 50 people to, and so we will be doing that again in the summer at some stage. But again, I think we've been we're a little daunted at times, but happy to see so many people coming and walking on the property, looking at the animals, walking into BB Woods. It's a good problem to have. Okay, so just finish up really quickly with year two plans. We're now going into year 2, and what do we want to get done this year? The first thing is that at this point, we've basically closed our flock. We don't want to bring any more sheep in from outside because that brings the risk of disease that we don't want. So we've closed the flock, but we need to build up numbers so that we can better match the grass production with the sheep that we have on the property. And we'll do that over the next 2 or 3 years, and we'll get up to a number which will work given the constraints that we're dealing with. So that will be a big part, building that flock up to better manage that grass. We need to complete the main barn renovation. There is also an old goat barn that, according to Doug, really isn't worth saving. So we will remove that barn and plan for a replacement on a concrete slab that barn sits on. It's a great location. It's got the concrete slab. We might as well make use of it. We're going to be continuing to fight the invasive battle. We'd like to use pigs again. They were great. Mike's mowing this week, actually, again, to knock down the invasives before they can seed, before they can pod, so that at least we're holding our own in that fighting that particular upstream in that river.
We also purchased a flail mower. We don't have a tractor yet, but Simon has a friend with a tractor, which is the best kind of tractor you can have. And we got a flail mower, so we'll be able to do some of our own mowing even when Mike's not available to mow.
And yeah, and so then, and finally, there is old pasture at the very west end of the farm that is currently not behind the fence. It's turning into an invasive nightmare. It is one area that we could relatively easily restore back into pasture if that was something that the town wanted to do. So that's the question mark there. Is that certainly possible? We could probably do it. But those are our year 2 plans. And we'd like to stop there, obviously open it up for any questions or comments that people might have.
Courtney, or anybody?
Just say one thing, Mr. Chairman, first. I just want to thank Simon and Diana. They've done an amazing,
Absolutely.
amazing job
work.
with such work. It was really scary when they first got on there with the amount of invasives, so they've put a tremendous effort into that parcel. The town Parks Department has been great in helping remove some of the invasives. AmeriCorps has been great. The 300 Committee has been great. So it has been a real collaborative effort out there, and it continues to be. So that's a good thing to see, bringing some life back to the farm. Since, I mean, the invasives, when we lost the last shepherd, to now, the invasive just took over that area.
Yeah. Nice work.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody want to say anything?
Yeah, I
Come
want
on.
to say something. First, I want to say something. So I have two comments. One is, when I first got on Concom, Karen Wilson, who was a conservation member, who knows all the invasives in town, gave an invasives course at Peterson Farm. So I learned all my invasives there. And I'm sad to hear that I could still
You could still do
take
it.
the course there. No, I think this is fantastic.
Correct.
The only
No.
thing,
Okay.
the only thing
Wanna
I
make
would
sure.
suggest, and you're gonna love this, but it's something that I've been doing with the river project, is maybe get some of the schools involved. I think it'd be great to have some of the school kids. I mean, some obviously go out there, but there's some that probably would never have an opportunity to go out. And so maybe I can work with you, we can arrange some
Yeah, that would be great.
field
A more
trips.
organized effort.
We've had a few, we've had groups of visitors, like Boy Scout, Girl Scout troops and stuff come, but that's just through word of mouth with me and Simon, and so it'd be great to have broader reach, and we're really passionate about farming and the land and what we're doing there, and so we love to share it with anybody who comes by,
Well, I
whether they
think
want to
it'd
hear
be
it or
great.
not, probably.
Yeah, we've been working, I mean, this year, it ramped up so that, like, all the 4th graders came out for a field trip. And so,
Is that the green bus tour?
yeah, the green bus tour.
So I'm involved with that through Hui. They actually come through, and just this year I was like, oh my gosh, you guys should go to the farm. Like, that should be
yeah.
a stop on the tour, because they go to the water treatment facility, I think,
Right.
or they did the previous year, and then compost with me. So I think it would be great to be involved with the
Yeah,
green bus.
so
That would be
anyway, let's get
fun.
together and
Yeah.
talk about possibilities.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have an active farming area, and it's really, it's a wonderful gift to the town that you're stewards of this conservation land. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you want me not to say anything?
Does that matter?
No.
Good luck with that.
Can I just follow up on one thing, Mr. Chairman? is
Absolutely.
That the 300 Committee does have a subcommittee that's actively working on a land management plan for this parcel, to kind of keep the values of why this parcel was purchased. So they do currently have a subcommittee that's working, and Mark Kasperzik is involved with that subcommittee, and I believe Alex is, and we're hoping that someone that can represent an agricultural aspect will also be part of that subcommittee.
It's exciting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, vote minutes. Do we have any minutes to vote?
No, we'll do it then next
No.
time.
Okay.
We kind of misplaced those minutes, sorry.
So, next would be request for a continuance on a notice of intent, Town of Falmouth, care of DPW Engineering, 59 Town Hall Square, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to expand the existing parking lot in the rear of the building.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the town is requesting a continuance until July 10th. I know this is multiple continuances, but we did revise our submittal to DEP. It did take me a while to review that for the town to make sure we hit all the buttons that DEP wanted us to.
Okay.
And then we had some computer malfunctions last week, so that was just sent off to DEP today.
Okay.
So we should be able to have a file number by the 10th.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we continue this to July 10th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next up, a request for determination of applicability. What you want to hear is a negative, just for the record. First, is the first one continued?
It's going to be continued, yes.
Okay, because I don't have anything on it,
Yep.
okay. First up is Lynn Falkenberg, 38 Drift Road, Falmouth, Mass., for permission to conduct ordinary maintenance by hand, placing stone within voids and existing riprap.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we are requesting a continuance until July 10th to advertise that they would also like to license the structure. So it was that little bit
Do we
missing.
need no need a motion for that,
Yes, we do.
do we? Okay.
At the request of the applicant, I make a motion to continue this to July 10th.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Next up, Sarah Shanklin and Lawrence Cohen, trustees, 663 Minot Road, East Falmouth, Mass., for permission to rebuild second-story deck and stairs.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the staff is recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Sorry. Yes, it is. Victoria Lefevre, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you showed me something. And Gerald Fine, 21 Church Street, Woods Hole, Mass., for permission to continue invasive management according to the order of conditions for DEP number 25-2763.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we will recommend, where are my recommendations? Oh, here they are. We're recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next up, Gary Moskowitz, 177 Coonamessett Circle, East Falmouth, Mass., for permission to vista prune according to FWR 10.18-10-B.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until July 10th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Duncan Cook, 17 Cordwood Landing Road, West Falmouth, Mass., for permission to pump, fill, and abandon existing cesspools and upgrade to a Title V septic system.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the staff is recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
All
That
right,
was the recommendation, so, I mean, I know there's someone would like to speak on this.
we want a motion first?
I'll move to accept staff's recommendation.
Sorry?
I'll move to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Any comments from the public?
I think it's
McGrath?
appropriate I describe the repair. So,
And also, Mr. Chairman, did everybody receive the Buzzards Bay Coalition?
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Yes, you all received the Buzzards Bay Coalition letter.
You got the letter.
Did we just make a motion to approve this?
No.
It was a recommendation based on, where the thing is, but you didn't make a motion yet.
We did make a motion.
We did make
We
a
haven't
motion.
voted.
We just
Haven't
didn't
haven't
vote.
voted.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
yeah, you haven't voted it yet.
Because basically we heard the other night, I had this comment on it too, the health department said.
Say that again?
Remember what the health department said about this? Not
this is,
about the
this land is
No, they haven't
located,
Yeah, it's the way I asked.
I'm sorry,
I'll ask
I'm,
again.
My hands don't seem to be connected to my eyes. Whoops, wrong one. I guess I should be looking at this. Yes, all right. This is a copy of a locus map that's copied from the town's GIS. And this is Nashawina Street, this is the Mashapaquet Creek, and we're talking about repairing a septic system that's at 17, basically Cordwood Landing Road. And what goes on here is, going to the next slide, is this is the existing dwelling, there's a garage, and what we're proposing to do is there are two different cesspools. The cesspools are very, very close to the edge of the salt marsh and the bordering vegetated wetland. So what we're proposing to do is construct a new Title V system where we connect the various pipes, and then we have a septic tank connected with a pump system, and then we're pumping the fluid up to a standard Title V leaching bed. So, under your regulations, this meets all your standards for a repair of a septic system that's near coastal resources. So but one of the things that's been brought up is, why wouldn't these people put in some denitrification? They've chosen not to. So what I've done is, I have 3 patents on on-site wastewater. 2 of them are lapsed, but there's one common one. So I've been doing on-site systems for a very long time. I built the first denitrifying septic system in Massachusetts. In any case, what this diagram shows the existing cesspool and groundwater. What happens is, when there's a septic system in groundwater, there's basically no reduction of total nitrogen coming out of the sides and the bottom of the cesspool. So you get almost 100% of the nitrogen after a few years. And when it's first installed, there is a process where the nitrogen is attached to the soil particles in the groundwater. But after years, it just breaks through. It's also in the form of organic or in the form of ammonia. So there's no contaminants of emerging concern removal, and the fecal coliforms for a septic system in a groundwater has been documented to flow over 750 feet. So one of the issues is, what happens when we put in a new Title V system? So this is a diagram. The first thing is there's 20% loss of total nitrogen in a septic tank. Then we're going to pump it onto a soil absorbent system. When we dose ruck filters, we get between 20 and 25% loss of total nitrogen under in a ruck filter, so you're going to get the same amount. Here, you're going to then get the nitrogen is in the form of nitrate, and there is attenuation of nitrogen in the groundwater, but there isn't enough space here to meet what the EPA has described as a sufficient distance. But no matter what, there is a loss of some nitrogen. Then there's a removal of fecal coliforms, like 99.9% will be removed in the 5 foot below the soil absorbent system. And then Title V systems have a removal of most contaminant of emerging concerns. Then this plume is not very thick, and it's going to be oscillating back and forth with the tides, meaning the groundwater moves up and down with the tides, so the direction oscillates. And it's also in the form of nitrate. To have denitrification in the environment, you have to have nitrogen in the form of nitrate. There has to be an available carbon. There has to be carbon available, and generally there will be, below the salt marsh. So I think that the way that this is being designed, its location, there's a benefit to the environment. So you do not, as I said, this does meet the requirements of your regulation for septic repair near the wetlands. What I talked about was, on this plan, I show that these cesspools are very close. And so if the groundwater oscillates, the plume isn't going to be that big. So it wouldn't surprise me that there's breakthrough, especially since it's the form of nitrogen that doesn't get treated, it just passes through. Here, I drew on here what would be my best guess of the oscillation in the groundwater between high and low tide. So that's why I'm talking about the groundwater oscillating. So anyways, so since it meets your criteria, and I realize there are people here that want more treatment, I have asked both the current family if they would put in denitrification, and they declined, and so did the future. It's under purchase and sales in the future, and the future purchaser asked me, does this meet the town standards? And I said, yes. He said they didn't want to pay for denitrification. So, have you got any questions about the design?
Tim?
No.
Well, there are some questions.
Betsy?
Well, first of all, I have a comment about you mentioned that nitrate will be taken up by the marsh, but the fact is, it's been demonstrated that an increased amount of nitrogen will change the composition of the marsh grass. And so it's not like it has no effect. You're right that it will change it, but it will cause ecological changes.
Generally, the description of the processes that I've been talking about are the soil bacteria. So there is a significant amount of soil carbon that's going to be down at this level. This is within a foot of the top of the water
Right, but it
table.
will also be taken up by the
Yes,
marsh
it can,
grasses.
it will probably be in the root zone.
Right.
But as far as I'm concerned, that's so much better than the direct
Well,
ammonia.
I don't disagree with that, but we were at a meeting Monday night, many of us here were at a meeting Monday night, and the Board of Health were interviewed for reappointment, and the question came up whether denitrifying systems, couldn't the Board of Health have a requirement that any new septic area within, I don't know how many feet they said, but 100 feet or some distance, couldn't they make a regulation? And it was George Heufelter who said, yes, now that we can demonstrate that there are issues with ecological health and human health. So,
For the benefit of the audience, I don't need this discussion because I filed a letter accompanied by research that said that the various town boards should adopt regulations that require denitrification near the estuaries.
well,
So I
That's-
did,
that's-
and unfortunately, the
Mike,
town
you need
chose
to
not
address
to.
the board, not the audience.
All right, I just want to make sure they understand that.
well, and I just want to make sure that the audience understands that the health department intends to take this up. And we certainly would be, we on the commission would certainly be supportive of that. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Kevin?
Isn't it the case that the Buzzards Bay Coalition was offering to give a grant to the
Yes,
owner?
yes.
7,500, which would
But there's still additional
But that-
costs.
There's still a, $7,500 is still generous. That's all the money they had left, and they were willing to donate it to,
I understand.
apply it to this case.
I support their efforts. I did ask the current owners and the future owner, and they refused. So, it's,
all he can do
Yeah,
present
I
what
know,
his
I
client
understand, I
wants.
understand.
That's okay. we
And
discuss
it's just, you know, but we're damned if we do or damned if we don't.
Well, I mean, we can't require it, so,
Yeah,
there it is.
You haven't, you have in the past. I don't think the system was located this far away, but you have required it in the past.
But yeah,
And I
with
think
something
this
that was
system,
much
this,
closer to
yeah, it was
this
much closer
Right.
than this.
On Sweet Street.
Courtney?
I don't think there's much I can add to what's already been said.
All right.
I would love to see a denitrifying system here,
I
but
think we all would, but Steve?
No, I'm interested in hearing the rest of the public comment.
Peter?
Yes, I have a question. The treatment area or the plume area that's going to be reducing the nitrogen, could you compare it before and proposed after? For instance, the cesspools were virtually in the groundwater level, and they wouldn't treat or reduce the nitrogen at all. But
Right.
the proposed leaching bed, I don't know how many feet it is above water level, and what would be the approximate distance of treatment, if any?
I'm trying to express this as quickly as I can, but it's well-known, for instance, that if you spill gasoline in the ground, that right now, the only thing they really worry about is the additives. In other words, there are soil bacteria, and they are numerous, and they consume the gasoline. So what happens in a Title V system that's set the proper distance above, there is a certain amount of basically carbon that is slow to degrade, and it drops down into the groundwater. There's already some carbon there because there are hundreds of thousands to millions of soil bacteria in every cubic centimeter of soils. Of those bacteria, most of them are aerobes, but there's a small portion of anaerobes. So, and there's a study by the EPA that was published in the Chesapeake, and it's based on work done at MBL. And basically, they found that in 200 meters, which is, 660 feet more or less, that the total nitrogen from a septic system dropped to innocuous levels, which are generally less than 3 parts per million in the groundwater. Here, we have, I think the distance through the middle is like 140 or 150. It doesn't, it depends on which route it takes. And one of the things that happens is that it's hard to predict what goes on because the soils are not really all the same. And so sometimes it's hard to find the plumes. But generally, the groundwater in the air and estuary will go back and forth. I've done enough geohydraulic studies to know that. So this groundwater will move back and forth. So the other reason I checked the depth was, will it be below the salt marsh? And it seems to be within the root mass. So I think there will be some in situ denitrification, but I don't know the amount.
So how many feet above the water level is the soil
bunch of them here.
absorption planned to be?
I have to,
Long hearing for
it's
him.
5 feet,
Long hearing for
the same as the
Yellow.
code.
Now, in the absorption, you mentioned 650 feet to get it
That-
really down. Is that proportional, or it's a square function, or what's the,
That's,
Maybe that's a lesson for another day.
that is something that I have to be careful because I'm very much aware of it. Really depends on the soil texture changes. If you dig down in sand, you can get all these little texture changes, and that's where the magic occurs. So, the bottom line is that I don't know enough to tell you how much the rate is. I just assert there will be some.
could you give an educated guess? What percentage of nitrogen reduction will take place with the proposed versus the existing?
Oh, well, there's none. There's absolutely none from the cesspools. They've been there long enough that there's none. There's no nitrogen reduction.
Okay, what would be the reduction in the proposed system?
Something around 45%, not counting what might occur in the groundwater.
45%, okay, that's enough.
Significant.
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of accepting staff's recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. McGrath.
Thank you.
Next up, Highwater Realty Trust, care of Saul Pennell, trustee, Lot 1, Penzance Road, map 5201022001, Woods Hole, Mass, for permission to construct an addition over existing patio.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Next up, William and Susan Patterson, 21 Montgomery Court, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct an addition and add a second story.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we recommend a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. All right. Notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up, Susan Moran, trustee, 402 Wild Harbor Road, North Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a 3-car garage with living quarters on the second floor, on-site sewage disposal system, driveway, retaining wall, utilities, and all associated grading, excavating, and landscaping.
So we have no choice.
Yeah.
Be able to see that. Okay, so you're gonna go on your, which one's
Go
your?
still going.
Is
There
this
we
you?
go, and we'll start with entire.
Entire?
Yeah, double. Now, how do I turn it 90 degrees?
Oh, Jack, now
Now.
see, this is not good when Brendan's not here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't marked, I mean, I knew because
There's gotta be a way.
I'll take them. Thank you.
It could be the last time.
Can I tell them what these are for?
Oh.
The people in the back.
Please educate.
So you potential Eagle Scout people,
Why did you do this?
you know what these are? No. Okay, so anybody who presents something has to inform the neighbors. And it's a certified letter, and this is to show that the neighbors had been informed.
Happy battle.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jack Landers Colley. I'm a civil engineer of private practice, and I've been retained by the Morans to prepare prepare the plan that's before you this evening and the application of the notice of intent. In the audience is Bob Ahmet, who is representing them, and Elaine Johnson, the landscape designer.
All right, Jeff, I'm at a loss on how to turn your little thing.
Okay, so we
Mr. Chairman, excuse me.
rotate you.
There's some people in the back carrying
Can
on
you
a
guys take the
conversation.
conversation
If they would
outside,
take it
please?
outside,
Ladies? Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Not at all.
There you go, Jack.
Okay. Bear with me, it's my first time using this device, and I'll try to get through the process, and because of my trepidations, I did bring a plan mounted on a board.
Hang on, Jack.
The plan that's on the display right now shows the entire lot of the Morans. Yep. Thank you. That part I can figure out. I hope I can get the rotation again. Want to go the other direction? Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they do. We were out there last
I'm
year.
only using this plan to demonstrate that the proposed activity is approximately 172 feet away at the closest point on the left side of the lot. You see a dimension of 171.6. I bring that to your attention only because we have an inset plan at a larger scale that has the specifics of the proposed project. So let me get out of this one, if I can. Where am I?
Where's Brendan when you need him?
He's on
Okay.
Nantucket.
He's on
Okay.
the- Okay, so.
Got that one?
Okay, so this is the inset
Okay.
plan. This plan is the same plan as which I just showed you, except it is an inset at 10 scale that you should have in your possession, which shows a proposed carriage garage. That carriage garage will have 3 locations for parking a vehicle. Second floor, there will be 2 bedrooms and a sitting area. As such, we need to provide water, septic system, and some method of heating the structure. I don't know if the architect has chosen gas, oil, or electric. But I think that's incidental because all 3 exist on the site. Where the proposed house is going is an existing garage, which is in this area and shown dashed, and a driveway leading from their existing driveway, or I should say a entranceway into the garage. We have designed this so there'll be minimal to no excess cutting or filling. What we've done is we've chosen an elevation around 13.5, 13.7. We did so we could minimize the difference in elevation from the existing driveway to the garage area and minimize the amount of cut on the backside of the lot. With the design of the house, we propose a dry well here and a dry well over in this area. To go to the structure, we're proposing, we have 2 driveway areas, and they're going to be constructed, or we're proposing to construct them of a porous paver material, and included in the submission should be some literature on the porous pavers. I think to cut to the chase, the project in its entirety, I believe, complies with all your regulations, with some question about whether or not we have to provide mitigation for the two driveways. And quite frankly, I met with the staff, we read the regulations, and we believe that there's an opportunity for this board to approve the porous pavers without providing additional mitigation. Having said that, if you look on this plan, you will find down here, very simply, what the lot proposed, existing, lot coverages are by structures, and those structures including the house and, excuse me, the driveways. Right now, the existing garage and driveway is 799 square feet. The proposed structure within the area's jurisdiction of the board, and I guess I want to add at this point that if you were to go to the site, you would find that we staked the 100-foot offset from the salt marsh, and we staked the 25-foot, 50-foot, and 100-foot offsets from the end of the coastal bank. And for the board's benefit, this lot is, and the abutting lot to the bottom of the page have had two ANRADs, two abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. So the salt marsh has been approved by this board on two different occasions, the latest somewhere between a year and 16 months ago. What wasn't included was the actual delineation of the top of the coastal bank, because at the time, we were concentrating on the lot to the bottom of the page, and at the time, it didn't occur to us that we should be looking for certification or approval at the top of the coastal bank. Having said that, we met with the staff twice. We demonstrated through transects that we submitted to them that this is the location of the coastal bank, and I think it's fair to say that they agreed with us. So all the resource areas have been approved, either through the ANRAD or through the subsequent meetings with the staff. Having said that, that gave us the 25-foot, 50-foot, and 100-foot buffers. So, backing up, we believe, again, this project complies to all your regulations, with the one question and doubt in my mind as to, do we need to provide mitigation planting, and if so, how much? So what I did is I wrote down, I actually reduced it to writing here. It's a little hard for me to see it on this display, but let me give you a copy. I color-coded it, just to be a little bit easier to understand.
Thank you.
I don't know if I have enough. So, someone may have to share one.
We
I
can
do have
share.
enough. Okay, you're welcome.
Did Jen get one?
Did Jen get one?
So the existing structure is 799 square feet. We're tending to remove that. The proposed structures within the 100 feet is 835, or we have a net increase of 36 square feet. We have an existing walkway that's depicted on the plan here, right in this area. And again, bear with me, it's my first time using this type of device. Of 200 square feet, and then the proposed pavers, which is the point of question in my mind, are these two areas right here. And this is a single door into a garage, so it's a single wide driveway. And this one has a double door, and so it's a little bit wider. I know from memory, this one's 20 and a half feet wide. I think this is 10 feet. The proposed pavers are 1,154 square feet, or a net increase of 954. You'll have to forgive me. One of the things I was doing when I was reviewing my notes is I realized I didn't include what I called passively altered areas, i.e. when you go out there, you'll see that there's a dog fence in this area. and on the other side, there's some landscaping. So what I did is I sent the crew out there to locate it, and we came up with a number of 493 feet. That is not included on the plan. But,
What was that, Jack? The 493?
93 square feet.
Is
And
what?
basically, if you were to go there, you know, on this, to the left side of the garage, there's a dog pen. And
It's a very
so
big dog in it. Now, is that pervious, impervious?
that's pervious. That's mulch. And so I'm differentiating indigenous plant cover versus altered landscaping, because I think there's a distinction by this board to know that. So it's my belief the net difference between our proposed activity and the pavers is really 497 square feet. The 36 square feet for the addition, the 461 square feet of pavers. And that's really the question at hand. I think everything else, again, complies to your regulations. So what we did is we took a look at the porous paver documents that we know this board has seen before and has approved in some capacity. And what I wanted to do was argue why I thought we didn't have to mitigate, because the use of porous pavers, and what I did is I flagged the material at the time. You don't have that benefit. But the first thing I did is I turned to a section that indicated inches of rain during 24 hours with the grass paved to design, or the gravel paved to constructed over sand. They're showing that there will only be a retention of somewhere around, or a discharge or a runoff over those areas of something less than 10%. Or to say it another way, 90% will be retained in the porous pavers. Another section, again, forgive me, it's not, the documentation isn't numbered. They said the lifespan typically of this product is somewhere around 60 years, so I don't see it being replaced often if this documentation is in fact accurate. At the end of the literature, I found that they actually say that the grass paved to design works effectively in driveways and light traffic if the slope of the surface is less than 8 degrees, and that surface that we're proposing is 5 degrees. And then it has some very generic terminology about stormwater management and how it's better because it retains basically the mineral content in water runoff if it were on a driveway. This is not the case. It would be directly discharged onto the concrete paver, so I'm not sure that applies. So I think there's a lot of good information in here that indicates why this board could approve it. The last is, and I tried finding in the literature, how much of the pavers are actually, how much void area is there? And what I have to do is I have to go to their typical chart and back calculate the porous area, and basically there's 70% void ratio on the porous pavers. And so I got thinking about that, and that 70% actually can handle somewhere in the order of 90% of the runoff based on this literature. And by way of example, I wanted to explain to the board, if it didn't seem obvious, is if you were to drive down the road during a rainstorm, you see the catch basins on the side of the road. 50% of that basin, that 2 foot by 2 foot square basin, is open area. The rest is the actual frame itself that gives you the structural integrity of the catch basin. So this is not much different. That 50% void ratio for a catch basin takes 100% of the water. This has a 70% void ratio. Now, I think the key for this to be successful is you follow the directions. There's very specific saying that it has to be a porous paver on a sandy base, which we clearly have on Cape Cod, and can provide easily. So, you know, it's my belief for all those reasons that the board can consider that it's, can approve this project without mitigating for that particular area, because it provides a lot of benefits, basically. So if you have any specific questions,
I do.
I'd be happy to answer those I can. If I can't, I'm sure Bob or Elaine would be happy to contribute.
Jack, when you say existing structures, what are you talking about? And where did you come up with 799 square feet?
I actually, we measured the apron in front of the existing garage. There's a space between the apron and the building. That actually is a concrete apron that the men in the field, when they surveyed it, they distinguished between paved and
Where is the
concrete and then
apron
the
on the
garage.
plan, Jack?
Excuse me?
Where is the apron on the plan?
Okay, you'll have, let me move this. Hold on. I bugged the plan? Yeah, that might be helpful. Thanks, Bob. Okay,
I think I see it,
this is the
Jack.
garage right here, starting in this corner and going clockwise.
Yeah, that's
This
the
is the
garage.
garage.
That's
Then,
500 square
starting
feet.
right here and going down, coming across and going back is paved driveway. So what I'm saying is those two elements equals the numbers I gave you, the 799.
Okay. Hang on.
And again, and then if you look at the calculations on the plan, this is the area that is subject to your jurisdiction right in here. Theoretically, everything to the top of the page is greater than 100 feet from the top of the coastal bank is out of your jurisdiction. And then I explained to you at the very onset of the presentation that we're 171 feet from this point to the top of coastal bank, so, I mean, we don't have any activities beyond 15 to 20 feet beyond the garage, so we're still all over 100 feet from that top of coastal bank. I should probably add, this coastal bank is less than it's flatter than 4 to 1. It's not eroding. It's not immediately adjacent to another wetland resource. It is next, it is close to, but not adjacent. It's separated by a driveway. And it's not in a velocity flood zone, it's in a still water flood zone. On the plan, it should specify the flood zones. If you were to go to the first plan, we had over here, there was a velocity zone. And then everything to the right of that is an A zone. It's either an A15 or I think 13 if you go far enough away. Having said that, I did check with the architect. He assured me that the construction of a building where the entire first floor is garage is permissive. And he is, assuming we get approval of this project the way it's presented, will design the lower level to comply with the floodplain regulations of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the U.S. government.
Okay, so your proposed structure of 835 is the proposed garage with the staircase on the side, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and your proposed pavers, you have a net increase of 5, so what's the 1154? Is that what's already on site
The
for
11
pavers?
The 1150 is if you took these two areas
Yeah,
and combined them in total.
so do you have 1154 proposed pavers or 954
No,
proposed?
it's 1154. I then told you I had to make an adjustment because of an oversight. We had an adjustment of about, excuse me. We have an adjustment of 493 square feet of area that I didn't include. That is area
Yes,
that's
I understand.
basically in this, most of it, about 425 is over here, and then I think we had another 60 square feet over here credited. So,
What's
Um,
60 square feet?
Existing walkways.
I beg your pardon?
So, Jack, I'm just trying to figure out, your proposed pavers, you have two different numbers. Which one is correct?
The proposed pavers is 1154. If you look directly in that table I gave you,
All right, that's what I'm looking
there
at.
is 208, there's a 200 square foot credit for this gravel walkway, which is going to be removed. So what I did is I
Oh,
took the
got it, got it, got it, got it, got
1154,
it.
Existing
I
walkways.
subtracted out the
Yeah,
200.
I know,
Yeah.
got it.
We just figured that out, too.
Yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
Jack,
it's,
you just weren't clear
there's a
about
lot
that
of
one.
numbers here. The point, and I realize it's new to you, but we were very methodical in the way we did it.
Okay, no,
Um,
so you have a 36 square foot increase, right?
That's correct.
Not counting your pavers. So right off the bat, to keep you consistent with everybody else, you're gonna have to provide a 2-to-1 for that 36 square feet. I know it sounds small, but keeping with every other plan and project we see, that's what we're gonna have you put on the plan, okay?
That's
Now,
why
the board's
Elaine's
gonna have to
here.
decide if they are comfortable with, 1,154 square feet of these proposed pavers. These pavers are getting used more and more and more often, as a way to kind of skirt around the mitigation requirement. So, I mean, the board can decide how you feel about that. It's the same paver you approved in a much smaller area. I think it was a one-car area in Woods Hole. You did approve a larger area. I don't know if it's quite as large as this in Office Central. So it's something the board's gonna have to consider.
Yeah, it wasn't that big. It wasn't as big as
No,
this area.
so, that's all the questions I have. I've been out on the site many times. So Jack, where would you put the mitigation plantings? And are we going to fix the mitigation plantings from the last project?
Before, thanks, Jen. For your record, I'm Bob Ament, attorney. I do want to first make a couple comments in addition to what Jack has said about the use of the areas for these pavers. The northerly of the two driveways, that is the 10-foot wide one in this area, actually will rarely be used by a vehicle. This area inside is not being designed as intended to be for vehicular use, but for just storage of equipment. The use of this garage and the property in general is at this time seasonal. Now there's some use during holiday times and the off-season, but it's pretty much a seasonal use. In addition, the pattern of the family in the use of the property is to park in that large turnaround that's in front of the house, this area, where there's plenty of room for it to park along the side and still pass by in another car. So I think those are important points because this is a fairly lightly used area that's intended in front of these garage doors. So I'd like you to take that into account. In a previous case recently, 88 Gardner Road in Woods Hole, in which an area of the pervious pavers was approved as pervious, the board attached a condition that the operation of the pavers be reviewed after a year. The Morans would have no objection to a similar condition, and I think the fact that it will be a limited use, and as you know, if you've been out there, this property is immaculately maintained, that they'll make sure that they do everything to make the pavers work. If there were a problem, there are a couple of options. One, at least one of those driveways could become grass. Because of the nature of the use, it's going to not be used very much. I think it's better if the pavers are used, but they would consider eliminating them. Again, we think that the pervious pavers, which you've approved in the past, is a better solution. The other possibility, of course, is that they do provide mitigation, and I don't think Jack would mind if I give you an idea of some of the areas that have been considered for mitigation. There's a, trying to get rid of that, I've just covered up what I want to do.
You can leave the whole thing up with the side. Go over to the side and then pull the whole plan up.
Thank you, Betsy.
You're welcome.
So along the waterfront, there's a fair amount of lawn area in here. This is an area that's available for mitigation. Some portion of the lawn that is in this area could be used. We don't want to use a lot of it, but that in combination with this area would provide a significant area for mitigation. Again, we think that the pervious pavers previously approved by the board and with the condition that I've specified is a better solution and the one we'd like to pursue. Thank you. If you have questions, I'll try to answer them.
I'd like my other question answered, though, from Jack. The area that when we looked at, that has all the decorative grasses, that was previously supposed to be used as mitigation and now is mulched and maintained with little ball plants and grasses. Are we going to restore that to its mitigation area again?
That would be a yes from me. I am not an arborist or a horticulturist, and that's why Elaine is here. So she asked,
Honestly, tell you that the board did not approve the species that are there now.
okay, that was beyond
I know.
my control.
That will probably
that
have
message
to be
was,
remedied prior to, you'll probably see a condition that that's gonna probably have to be, put back to be mitigation plantings as required prior to the construction of this
From another
house. Okay? And I mean, you don't have, if the board allows the pavers, you don't have that much mitigation to add to it, so.
in principle, I agree with you. The only comment I have about that is if the plants chosen aren't hardy to be planted in the summer, because they'd like to start this in September, I might want to make exception to that. But I think that needs to be discussed between Elaine and you or your staff as to the plant selection. I just don't want to say, yeah, they can plant whatever they want, and then, some plants like American beach grass don't do well this time of year.
That's not used as a mitigation planting.
So, but I'm just using that by way of example, because it's
No, I
not a
understand.
coastal habitat.
I understand,
Um,
and just to
so-
go, no, but, okay, go on, Jack.
Other than that,
No, it's fine, I went out there on site, met with you, I have no real concerns with the area of the garage, as long as the mitigation, requirement is to the board's, you approve the mitigation requirement or waive it, that's fine. We'll write it up, but the prior order of conditions needs to be, complied with, and right now it's not in compliance.
Yeah, and that's straightforward.
Yes, and just to your point, Bob, 80% of the properties we see are seasonal. So, we see light use, and before Betsy has an opportunity to tell you,
It's written down.
I know it is
Number
written
4.
down. We don't approve a project based on a particular family or person that's occupying the property. We look at the property itself and have to think of any form, future use or owner of the property.
Well, I don't disagree with your needing to do that, but we're talking about whether an area is lightly used or not. I've explained to you that one of those driveways isn't even for vehicles and it's not being designed for it. And I've shown you the area that in fact receives the majority of the pavement. A condition that the operational status of the pavers be reviewed every number of years would not be objectionable. The goal is to have this work properly in perpetuity. I think it will.
done.
Mr. Byrd?
Just to point out that I think as we get these pavers, it's going to be sort of a policy that will be going out at least a year later, and hopefully staff will be reporting back to us. Because
That's a lot of effort on staff to have to visit every site that you're now approving with pavers to go
I
out on an
underst-
annual basis, so just to let you know.
I understand that, but the problem we're getting is that these pavers, and they're not just Acme brand, there's several pavers that are out there. And they're being used both for mitigation and in lieu of, saying that they will support grass. And we're still uncomfortable that they will support what they say they will do over a long period of time.
I think the point is, Mr. O'Brien, that after a year of inspection of not only this project, but other projects, you'll have a better opportunity to judge whether they are working as provided for. And
Well, I
nobody is-
agree with you, but what I'm saying is, we won't know until after at least a year on a number of projects.
Yes, but after that time, if they are not working,
Yeah,
there
we
are
have several
ample
that are.
remedies
Yeah.
Go see.
for either taking out the pavers and not having a driveway, at least for one of those, and for providing mitigation. I suppose one possibility would be for us to show where the mitigation could be, if it should be required after the use of the pervious pavers after a year. As we can show where we would do it.
I think that would be helpful, Bob. I think that would be helpful, and instead of requiring the staff to have it on the staff and the town's responsibility to report on this, it's going to be the reporting responsibility of the applicant on a yearly, annual basis to report on those, these types of areas. And I think that would be a good thing, Bob, to show on a plan, is if this did fail, where you could possibly place that, because I think part of the issue is because of the way and this is not at all subject to this property, but there are some properties that the expansion of the houses, the lots themselves cannot support the mitigation. There's just not enough room for the expansion of the property. So we have to make sure that if future applicants are using pavers as a way to not require, like for a driveway, so they don't have to mitigate for the driveway, and those pavers fail, there has to be room on the lot to allow that mitigation to go
Well,
forward.
this is a case where we could provide that information to you.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
And so I think that'll make it
Yep,
easier.
that'll
for
be
you.
helpful.
But once again, and really, we're only talking about this case, and that's a good solution. Going forward, if the board becomes comfortable with this product and this way of dealing with driveways, then that might be unnecessary, but we don't have to go there tonight because we would be
No, we
willing to
don't. And I
show-
can honestly tell you, Bob, there are some past projects that the board permitted years ago with these types of systems that are not working like that. They're basically gravel.
Yeah, I'm aware that there have been other systems in the past, and hopefully
think
this
it's
one
5.
does better.
Yep, no, that's fine. That would be helpful, and also how we're gonna fix the old mitigation area. Okay?
Jack, is the new paving, grass pavers the same as what's on site now?
Repeat that?
The proposed grass pavers, is it the same system?
No.
No, and those are doing
Those are
remarkably
doing
well.
well.
Those are doing well.
Site.
I'm not opposed to using those either. It's just we thought, when you read the literature,
That's a
this
good
has
example.
this has a
Successful.
pretty good history.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry, Kevin, you're still up.
No, that's fine.
You're all set.
Took my time.
That's it. Go easy, but fast.
Well, the first one is easy. I happen to know where this site was because we've been there several times before, but you're really supposed to mark it from the street.
There should have been 2 stakes set, noted on the street.
There were no stakes.
Someone
Did
must have
anybody
pulled.
see it?
I did,
The
actually.
same day that the lot was staked, the
Yeah.
front was staked.
One.
Oh.
So
Well, there were
someone
none by
pulled
the
them
time
out.
I got there.
Okay, they were pulled out.
Okay,
But-
thanks.
Not on Tuesday.
So, I had a problem on this lot and on another one that's coming up. You show on the main plan, from the landscape, from the little circle in front of the house, you show a set of pavers that go around the house, and I didn't see them.
I'm sorry, are we
Go back to
talking?
your main plan. Oh, there it
You
is.
can see it right
There it
there,
is.
See
top
the
left corner.
square, stop. Go up. No, back.
Down here?
Jack, the little squares.
The little squares. Go around the circle, and we'll
Go
tell you
towards
when
the
to
house.
stop.
The
Go around
pavers
the
to the right of the
circle.
house.
Keep going around the circle.
South of the house.
Keep going, stop!
There, flagstone.
They're not there.
They've probably grown over.
No, I'll tell you exactly what happened. We've worked on this site for 20 years. And probably when we were doing the riprap wall construction, they were there and then they were moved.
Okay.
I didn't, I went over, I said, am I
Okay.
reading this wrong?
No, I understand what you're saying. We've done an awful lot of work on this property, and it could be that, well, it is, they must have removed them.
Well, maybe you ought to do the square footage, and that might help you with a little bit of your square footage.
There you go.
Okay, my next
Okay.
question. My next question is, I don't get, so I got the 200 just before you did. But I keep working down this chart,
Yeah.
and it says, the dog, I didn't see the dog, but it says passively altered yard, 493 square feet.
Okay, what does that mean?
Yeah, what's that mean?
Okay, it's where there's cultivars and there's mulch on the ground. If you look in the dog shed.
Well,
in
no,
the
I
dog-
know, but.
Oh,
but
okay.
Why does it matter?
Why do we have to know how many square feet there are of that?
Because we're talking about disturbed areas and disturbed, that's the problem I had with your bylaw, because you talk about disturbed habitat and you talk about native habitat. And so I wanted to point out, and I wanted to make it part of the record, that that's already altered, so you don't, like you pointed out about the flagstone. Oh, that wasn't shown on the plan as being altered, so I just wanted to make a note that there is an area right in here, it's right in amongst the fence.
Right, well, maybe on your plan, you should indicate that, so in the future that we know that.
400, approximately 25 square feet, and then there's a little bit on this side, over here. I just wanted to point out that it already is disturbed, and I didn't want you to think that in our plan, we didn't point that out. That's
All right.
all.
Okay, my next question is, just back to Bob, and I had written what I was gonna ask, and I'm just gonna emphasize that anytime we make a decision on what's gonna be done on a lot, it has to do with what's happening on that lot. We don't know if there's not gonna be a season, a year-round person there sometime in the future. No, I got your
But they
point.
only had to do with the fact that we're dealing with a product which is relatively new, that the board is struggling a little bit and has in recent cases, and you're going to find out if it works.
No,
And
I'm
so
not-
the use of
I'm
the
not
property, I
arguing.
think, is
I'm-
very relevant.
I'm not arguing, I'm just pointing out to anybody who comes before us that it really doesn't matter to us whether the people are gonna live there year-round or not. We're looking at the project, what are you gonna do with the land? That's fine, I just want to reiterate that point. And I have one more for you, Jack. The flood zones were kind of challenging to follow, because there's lots of lines on this.
Yeah.
But it looks to me like you're in a 15, elevation 15, AE elevation 15,
That is correct.
and your slab is at 13.7,
That is correct.
which, so your first floor elevation is going to be 1 foot above 15, correct? Is it 1 foot?
That is a garage. I had this conversation with the architect because I wanted to know right at the beginning of our design, can he place the garage floor below the base flood elevation? And he said yes.
And the answer is yes. All right,
Okay.
but anything, any kind of
Any-
mechanicals or anything have to be,
And the
above
one
that.
exception to that is, I didn't bring the architectural plans with me. He
Yeah.
does have a mechanical room, and I told him he has to keep the mechanical room at elevation 17 or higher.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay, that was checked with him. I think I said in my presentation that would be designing flood vents or smart vents for the foundation.
Should come up in permitting too.
Yeah.
We're gonna move
That's
forward.
all.
Oh, we could have made it higher, it's just it wouldn't look
No,
good.
no, I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
The septic system is just for the new structure,
Correct.
and the relocated place that'll be farther away than 100 feet from anything?
Yes, in fact, you can see that the limited jurisdiction,
I know, it's only in a little corner of it.
yeah, it's only a little corner of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, no,
right
the
up
limited
in the air.
jurisdiction goes further down, because you have the wetland over there, Jack. Is there more where's my big plan?
Oh, we're greater than 100 feet away
Yep.
from that.
On the other side,
if you looked at
further
the
down the road? Okay,
Yes.
cool. That works.
And we're only talking about moving this maybe 10 feet, to be
Oh, okay.
honest with you.
All right,
Fine.
that's all I had. Thank you.
Peter?
Simple question, how much of the grass versus the gravel pavers are you going to use?
Well, when you read the literature, it seems you can have up to, in my opinion, a 70%. So let's use 1,000 square feet as an easy number. You would expect about 700 then, is what you would expect. In the case of 1,100, it would be 770, something like that.
That's it.
Good? Okay, pleasure.
We're gonna get a revised plan.
Well, so that's what I'm wondering.
Yep, we're gonna need a
Just want a
revised
revised plan with the potential mitigation area.
potential
shown.
mitigation area, the 70 square feet that 72 square feet you're required to, and probably a plan from your landscape architect, designer, on how that previous mitigation area is going to be restored. How about that, Jack?
I'm sure Elaine heard everything.
Yes, I'm sure she did.
So should we be asking for a 2-week continuance for receipt of that
Let me
information?
double check what our schedule is like in 2 weeks, Jack.
If it is as simple as it
I
sounds,
thought we were gonna close it.
or are you going to close
I
it?
thought we were gonna close it. Do we have a DEP number?
I think we should see all the completed drawings.
I think we should see where the proposed mitigation would go, because, I mean, that square footage for the pavers is gonna be a 2-to-1 mitigation. That's a large area. I'd like to.
So you want a continuance
I
to
would
see
like to
this
see
revised
what-
plan?
Yes.
All right.
Jack, it's gonna have to be to the,
17th?
it's gonna have to be to the 17th. July, is that okay?
I guess it has to be.
The request of the applicant?
17th?
July 17th.
At the request of the
Yeah,
applicant?
on behalf of our clients, we request a continuance to July 17th.
At the
Thank you.
request of the applicant, I'll make a motion to continue to the 17th.
Second.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
We have a motion and a second for continuance until July 17th. Any further discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote for continuance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you for bearing with me.
Unanimous.
Certainly.
Thank you,
No,
Jack.
Jack, you know how to get that out of there?
I'm all set with that.
All
Lovely
set?
to see you tonight, Jack. Jack, lovely to see you tonight.
Yes.
I said it was lovely to see you tonight. Yeah. Yep. Where do we continue this?
Not a problem, Jack.
Huh? 17th. Next up, Ronald Simmons, 14 Ridge Road, North Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct an addition, reconstruct decks, remove a concrete patio and walkways, relocate driveway, regrade lawn area, install fencing, and all associated landscaping, excavating, and grading.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? What happens if there's a change in staff and there's a continuance? Change in commission,
So look,
and there's a continuance.
okay.
What if I'm
If you have it
the
just
only one
difficulty, just let me know.
It-
Me and Courtney are it.
Courtney's up too. It's
Oh,
just,
is
it's
he?
you and me and Kenneth.
Really?
Yeah. Hopefully, our fellow members will also be our
Otherwise,
fellow
we have
members
a, we
in
have a
July.
quorum
Okay,
challenge.
can we take this up later, please?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
For the record, my name is Kelly Jeffrey Cardoza. I'm with Avalon Consulting Group, and I represent the applicants, Ron and Lisa Simons. Mr. Simons and Tim Santos from Homes McGrath are with me this evening. So the site that we're looking at is located at 14 Ridge Road, at the intersection of Ridge Road and Darrell Lane. Let me see how this pointer thing works. Okay, so there's Darrell Lane, and here's Ridge Road. The property also fronts on Rand's Canal here and runs along Rand Beach Road. This entire site is off of Wild Harbor Road in North Falmouth. It's a 2.36 acre parcel, and the house was constructed in 1963 at this location. The Simons purchased the property in early 2019, and they're now proposing to renovate the house and the landscaping. Particularly the landscaping hasn't been touched in a long time, and it's quite overgrown. Homes and McGrath mapped the resource areas of the property. So there's a fairly large area of bordering vegetated wetland shown here. The coastal bank is essentially the front lawn of the existing house. It's in kind of an orangey color and runs along here. There's land subject to coastal storm flowage. So there's an elevation, an AE elevation of 15 in this general area, and then here it splits. This is 15 and this is 17. Access to the home from Ridge Road is a brick driveway at this location right here, and it goes directly into the garage. The other access to the house is on the westerly end, which is here. And that's, at this point in time, the primary access to the house. There's been some work inside of it, so it kind of doesn't work anymore, but they're gonna be abandoning this as the primary entrance to the house, and they're gonna start using it here. So the next thing I did is I borrowed a couple of, this is just a close-up of the plan again. I borrowed a couple of pictures, if you will, from Google, just to show you what the driveway looks like. This is the first driveway that's shown right here. And this is the driveway that they want to continue using. The second driveway is that brick driveway that you can see with the house. If we continue down Ridge Road here, there's a white gate. So for those of you who are able to go and look at the site and you walked along through in this area right here, there are two other access points for the property onto Ridge Road. The first one, if we go back to the Homes and McGrath plan, the first one is right here, and it's marked, let me get to it here. It's marked former, approximate edge of former driveway, and the second one is an access into the lower lawn that's here. And these flagstones are the flagstones that are in the notice that will be removed. This is the furthest extent of the work away from the house. The rest of the work is primarily all close to the house. So we know from the aerial photographs that I included in your packet, let's get to them on this. That there was a former driveway, and I've colored it here in green, And so the aerial photography is from 1968 and from 1975, and this is where the driveway appears, and there was kind of a circular drive that went here. I use the word circular, kind of generously, it's kind of strange angles, but this was the primary drive. And so if you look at this plan from 1968, it's an aerial photo. You came in off of Ridge Road. The house would have been right here. This is the driveway that comes in, and then there's that kind of turnaround that's there. If we look at the next one, this is the 1975 plan. So here, again, is what I've called the former driveway, and it comes in front of the house, and there's a circle, or that turnaround that exists. So we know that in the aerial photos, we can see it in the topography. Holmes and McGrath picked it up in their survey, and there's also a fair number of patches of asphalt that are there. If you looked at them, that the Simons have kind of excavated out small divots, and you can see where the asphalt is. The next thing that they did was to have a GPR, which is ground penetrating radar study done of the site. And so that's the piece of information that was added to your packet, not in the actual notice, but into the packet that you got today. So GPR is ground penetrating radar. Just quickly, there's a transmitter, and a dielectric signal is sent down till it gets to a reflecting layer and then comes back. And so the person is able to look right on a screen when they're out there, and they can see whether there's a change in density in the layer. And so the report that we got from them indicates that at a distance of less than a foot, and we know this is the equipment that they used, and this is actually the markings that they did. I talked to the technician today. He said it's between 6 inches and 9 inches below the surface. He sees a strong signal. It's very consistent with asphalt. And we believe that driveway is still there. So the next thing I'd like to do is just kind of go through all of the work that's proposed here. If you remember this piece, as we do our calculations at the end, we're going to need to kind of go back to at least some portions of that. So if we just look at this, this again is the orange is the top of Coastal Bank. The Zone A is here out to that green line, and then between the green line and the kind of purpley line here is the Zone B. So the work that we're proposing to do, I just want to say that there's no work proposed in the bordering vegetated wetland. There is some work in the Coastal Bank right here, and that's the removal of 2 trees. The trees that are being removed are a 14-inch red oak, which has root zone concerns and canopy is dead, and then a split 12-inch by 2 red oak, which is essentially 5 feet from the house. The majority of the trees that are proposed for removal really are quite close to the dwelling. The other work that's going to happen there is they're going to extend the existing wooden fence that exists. The wooden fence goes to here, and they're going to extend it and add a gate about 75 feet. These lower lawn flagstones are going to get relocated and will actually become part of this new walkway that's here. And then as we're in this brick driveway, there is a fairly large granite slab, and what happens is you're on the driveway, you have to walk up, then you get to 2 raised gardens, and then you have to walk down a series of steps. So what they want to do is just simplify this area. Take out the granite slab, take out the raised gardens, grade this, and put some cedar trees and some other things in this corner, just to level out the lawn. And then the last thing that happens in the Coastal Bank area is right in here, and they're proposing to do some native ground cover plantings, 573 square feet, which includes ferns and perennials. And then they're proposing to replace 1 additional tree. There's a proposed tree at this location, and it's a shadblow tree, and we can look at it on the landscaping plan that you have in your package. So in the resource area buffer zones, what we're proposing to do is this deck right here. The foundation of it is not in good condition. And what they're proposing to do is extend the deck laterally along the edge of the house. And then also, there's a retaining wall that exists right here. It's part of the house and extends out. And there's about 3 feet of the retaining wall that extends further than the deck. What they'd like to do is bring the deck out to the same extent as the retaining wall that's there now. As we come around this way, there's a concrete walkway that goes here onto that existing driveway. That concrete walkway will be removed. The only thing that will remain is the small concrete step that's here for safety and as a requirement to come out of the house. As we continue to go, there's also a shed, and I may have to go back to show you the shed. The shed's right here, and that's going to be removed. There's also a small kayak rack that's being removed, but we didn't, I know in the impervious calculations, the kayak rack was not included, but the shed definitely was included. So as we go around the house at this location, there is a, on the very lower level, a concrete patio here and another door. The door is going to be closed up. That concrete patio will be removed. This deck right here, the foundation is competent, so they're going to keep that deck. They'll simply resurface the top of it. This end of the deck stays. There's a rinse station and some boardwalk in this area that will be removed. You might have noticed when you were there that the house has very large overhangs. So what they're proposing to do is to extend this portion of the house about 3 feet underneath the existing overhang onto area that is currently occupied by boardwalk and concrete walkways. They're going to do the same with the garage, so that it'll be extended out. That edge of the house will be made straight, and then there'll be a small addition, essentially the same area in size as the shed that's down here, and it'll be added on to that. The walkway that currently is right now adjacent to the house, they'll add a new walkway at this area, and then they're proposing to fence a small area in here and remove the fairly large rhododendrons that are overgrown in that area, and to put a lawn in there so that they can have a space for their dog to go outside and not get loose. We're going to add 2 dry wells to manage the flow from the downspouts. There are no dry wells on the site right now, so there are 2 of them that are going to be in the A zone, and then there actually are 2 of them that are in Zone B. Those are the 2 that are in Zone B. And then we're going to remove 4 trees here. We're going to remove some arborvitaes from this area, from the raised garden, a 24-inch red oak that is damaged from the gas meter installation and actually is located right here. A Coosa dogwood, which is a 5-inch, very skinny, old ornamental that's kind of at this location, and a 24-inch red oak that is approximately 2 feet from the house and is right over here. The work within the Zone B is to regrade this lawn, add that 3-foot tall fence for the dog area, extend the garage over that concrete walkway that we talked about, relocate and reconstruct the deck. There is a stepping stone pathway that comes from the existing driveway now. That will be made a little bit more robust. There'll be a bituminous walk with actual steps in them here rather than kind of wiggly-woggly steps that bring you into the house. And then probably the biggest thing that will happen is the existing driveway right now is gravel and grass, and you might have seen it, and it comes in this way, and what they do is they use that old circle that came from the other area that was part of the former driveway, then they come back around, and this ornamental garden is what they kind of drive around. The proposal now is they don't need a circle in here, in your A zone. Instead, what they want to do is pave this. It'll be bituminous pavement with a chip seal, and then put a turnaround, a real circle here, parking for 4 spaces at this location. And this area is proposed to be grass paved too. which you just heard in the previous application. I'm happy to discuss or to have Tim discuss it, but it's essentially the same product that's being proposed, and it's about 1,000 square feet that is there. In the B zone, we are going to, again, add those 2 dry wells, and then we're gonna remove 6 trees plus 1 dead tree. The dead tree is right out at the street. It's next to the electric meter that's out here, and it's a pine. There's a 24-inch red oak that's being removed, 14-inch red oak that's 5 feet from the existing deck. 36-inch eastern white pine, which is right off of the existing deck. If you were there, it's the one that's completely covered with English ivy. A 12-inch white oak that is compromised, 14-inch red oak, and another split 2x12-inch red oak. And those are actually here within the footprint of this new driveway. The buffer restoration that's been proposed is the native plantings in this area, but they've also proposed some plantings here in this kind of yellow zone. And this would be to take the area that's currently occupied by the shed and tie it into the native edges that already exist here. They'd like to keep this ornamental garden, but the area that they'll add in here will be native plantings. The shrubs are specified in here. It's viburnum, high bush blueberry, and
Witch hazel.
thank you, and witch hazel. And they've been proposed in this area. The next slide that I have, that we looked at just briefly before, is the calculation of impervious area on the site. So this is the one that indicates what's existing. In the Zone A, we currently have 5,046 square feet. In the Zone B, we have 3,572 square feet. If we go to the next one, it's proposed. In the Zone A, we have 3,855 square feet, and the Zone B, we have 2,473 square feet. So what that is in the Zone A, we have a reduction in impervious area of 1,099 square feet, and in the, I'm sorry, that's in the Zone B, and in the Zone A, we have 1,191 square feet. So they're proposing plantings here, but based on these calculations, they're not proposed as mitigation plantings as much as they are native restoration areas. That's generally what we have. We think that this overall plan complies with your regulations. And I'm happy to discuss more about the GPR or any of the other pieces if you have any questions. Sure. You have to ask.
Procedurally, do you have the abutters cards?
I was so worried about getting the thing in there that they're here. Do you want them for you or to?
To me,
All about Betsy.
she's been here long enough.
Thank you. Dan?
This is the homeowner.
I'd like to use the podium, please.
Good evening, my name is Ronald Simons, and I wanted to read a couple of letters that I got from the abutters.
Okay.
Into the record, if I may.
I mean-
They're short letters, they're only,
We'd want the proposal to be complete first, no?
What proposal?
Oh, yeah, you can write.
Okay, proceed, sorry.
I mean, sir, if they're just, they're letters, you don't have to read them
well, only take a
verbatim.
minute.
Yeah, you can just submit them
This
to
one
the
says,
record.
to the Falmouth Conservation, dear Conservation Department, and who it may concern, we received a notice of intent of 14 Ridge Road. We had abutters directly south of the lot line. We're pleased that the Simons will be taking care of the landscaping and the overgrown property at 14 Ridge Road. And that's Edward Cabot. He's on the south side of the property. The second one is from Joan Clark. She's our abutter to the west, all the way down the entire west side. And she says, "Dear conservation members, I'm writing in support of the application filed with you to improve the property at 14 Ridge Road in North Falmouth. The property has been neglected for many of the last 15 years, has become an eyesore in the neighborhood. Ron and Lisa Simons plans to renovate their home and take some trees down. Will not impact the environment, will greatly improve the appearance of the property." And we brought her around and showed her the property, and she's been there since 1968. Thank you very much.
Can you leave us that letter for the record?
Yep. Don't worry about it,
Record's
Betsy,
over
I
here.
got it.
We'll get it, we'll
I
get
have a
it.
record.
Don't worry about it.
Thank you, sir.
You need to ask.
Can I say one more thing about the pavers? Okay, I am a general contractor, and I have built and managed the only apartment building in Wayland that's right on a conservation area. And we installed those pavers into a road behind the property 2 years ago. And that road had about 2,500 square feet of this material. And we just had it written off about a month ago at Conservation. They came out for their 2-year inspection, and everything was working quite well. So I do like those pavers.
Good to know, thank you.
Thank you.
Jen?
Yes, I've been out to this property many times. I've gone over the proposal. I don't have any more questions or concerns with the overall proposed project. Again, it's just that paver area and how the board wants to handle it. So if you want to be consistent with the last plan, we may want to have an area proposed if they fail, and then have well, we were consistent with, the last plan, we're gonna require them to show where the area could be if the pavers fail. You may wanna do that.
These
as well.
calculations are all based on us accepting the radar survey.
No, I don't think you used the radar survey,
We
right?
haven't talked about that.
Okay.
This is the area that we're proposing to do plantings now. The plantings are not necessary to make the numbers work, so I would say that they're proposing to put the plantings in as part of this proposal. They wanted to make sure that they had, if you will, a belt and suspenders approach, that if the numbers didn't work as they were working on their final plan, that we had some plantings for
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, I'm gonna start on this one. Steve?
Thank you. I think your plan is a significant improvement to the current condition of the property. Appreciate that you haven't infringed on the wetlands area in front. It was interesting to walk around and try to figure out where that driveway might have been, the former driveway.
Did you see the white flags with the logo GPRS? Those
Oh,
were the
yeah, yeah.
GPR. So that's the definition.
I didn't know what they were, but
It's because we didn't get the GPR survey done until after we'd given you the notice, so I apologize
oh,
for
no,
that.
that's fine. They marked the way, so it made it easier to walk around. The gating, for the lower part of the road, that will remain, that's, I have no idea why.
That white gate that's
yeah,
there in the
yeah.
picture, that gate is shared by multiple homeowners for the access.
Clark, I think there's an easement between, there's an easement between.
I'm sorry, sir, but
There's an easement on the property between Gene Clark, who
Mhm.
has the property directly west, and our property.
Oh,
So
okay.
we
it only appears to service two homes.
just service the two of us. They have a key and we have a key.
I see. Yeah, I think that the improvements, now the structure above the garage that continued into the walkway, I didn't quite follow that part.
So there's gonna be, the garage will actually be kicked out 3 feet to make that wall along the house even, and then there'll be a small structure, he's gonna park his golf cart in it, and it's gonna be essentially the same size as the shed that's coming out of right next to the coastal bank. And that's going to be a little bit of a extension on that, so that it'll be large enough for a golf cart.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Peter?
Jen, I have a question for you. Do we have any precedent for saying that a blacktop surface with 6 to 9 inches of soil is impervious?
No,
We do?
no, we don't have any precedent. This is the first time I've seen something like this.
But this is not going to be included in the mitigation or whatever?
No, they're saying that they're not required. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Cardoza, that you don't you're not using the driveway that's underneath the soil as an offset,
Just the circular part of it.
just the
Just the
circular
circular part. We didn't use the long part, but in all honesty, if we just showed you the story of the circular part, it doesn't make any sense, because you have to see the aerial photos and you have to see the rest of it. So we are using just that circle as part of the calculations.
Okay.
I've never seen it before, Peter.
Okay.
Okay?
Any increase in bedrooms? Any change to existing septic?
No. The septic system will stay the same. There's no change to that.
When we bought the house, back in February, there was a Title V done in the septic system. It's a 4-bedroom house, it will remain a 4-bedroom house.
Betsy?
So, what I'm gonna propose, if you have to show a potential area for mitigation, it could be that area that just has turf over that pavement, right? I mean, the system would be better off. I mean, I know you're not proposing this now, but the system would actually be better off if that pavement were removed.
So in this area right here, where
Yep.
the weird green and the weird yellow come together.
Right.
The yellow is this mitigation area, and yes, it's not a mitigation area, it's a planting area. The only way those plants will survive is if the asphalt here gets taken out when they're planted.
No, and what I'm saying is, I mean, let's hope that the pavers work and you wouldn't have to do mitigation planning, but if you did, it could potentially be in the area that's underlain by, over to the left, the snake that goes up.
This
the
part right
green
here?
snake. No, no,
The
no,
yellow
no,
part.
all the way over, all the way
Oh,
over,
this area.
all of that.
Oh,
I mean, that's a whole area that,
Well, I
right
think-
now, you're not gonna do anything. I mean, it's lawn.
But Betsy, what I think she said when I asked that question was that the area that they're putting the witch hazel and the blueberry and the.
Right.
by Burnham.
By Burnham, thank you, they're not required to use that area. They're just restoring that area.
Right.
So they're saying that they wanna use that as,
No, I recognize, but that's
Okay.
not gonna be twice with a paver area. They're gonna need to identify
another
an
500.
additional 500 square feet.
500
And
square
that
feet.
potentially
It
could be along
That's
there.
right along the edge of the coastal bank.
I mean,
Absolutely.
hopefully you don't have to do anything and it stays as a lawn. But if you did have to do something, you have area on your lot to do it, is all I'm saying.
Yep.
And other than that, this was the second one that I said, what's this big square area? And I got out, I said, I know I'm at the right house. And I walked around and I came back and I said, am I supposed to be seeing something? This looks like a bunch of rhododendrons to me. But now I see that you're proposing it.
Yes. I'm glad you weren't too lost. And there was a sign. I know there was a sign at the street, because I saw it.
Oh, no, I had no trouble finding it.
Right.
It was lovely, except it did frighten me to not, no cars, no pedestrians, no nothing past that, so I didn't.
Why
go
they're
through
there.
that. I didn't go
Right.
through that gate.
No pesky commissioners?
Yeah,
I drove right through it.
yeah, I'm sure you did.
Are you good?
I'm good.
Kevin?
All set, thank you.
Courtney?
No questions.
Okay.
So
Blake, go ahead.
I'm gonna make a motion, close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
We have a
Okay, just-
motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board?
Just, Jamie, just so the applicant understands that, there'll probably be a revised plan requirement, because this area isn't quite as large as the last plan that we saw proposing, an additional mitigation area if the pavers fail. and probably an annual reporting requirement on the paver system.
And we
Just
also know that we owe you an updated landscape plan because the landscape architect's plan does not show the grass pavers area.
Correct.
So we
Yep.
had talked about that with staff
Yep.
already.
Correct.
You're okay waiting for that?
Yeah, that's fine. I can make, yep.
Okay, so, any comments from the public? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Cardoza, can you send me all that through email? I need it but for the open record, open.
beautiful
meeting
colors.
law. All the colors and the pictures and everything.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
So I wanted to just wait until,
I see. Well, and it could have been, you're right, it could have been done.
yeah.
Could I make one comment? Just a quick one. She's still up there.
Go ahead.
That was a very nice presentation of a complex situation.
Thank you.
Thorough.
Jen gives good advice.
Well, good, that's why
We
we're
don't hear
glad
that
she
often.
Why
supports us.
they keep me around.
Okay, I
For
think I'm
now.
just pulling this out because I don't.
Oh, I can help you.
How do I make it say release?
Hold on.
You don't have the right sesame.
You let them take a day off.
It's like down here, isn't it?
I know, I said,
Never Wednesdays
I said,
off.
you're gonna be back. You're gonna take the fast ferry. You're gonna be back in time to get to this meeting. That's what I told Brendan.
Don't worry about it.
You'd be all rested up on that boat ride.
That's what I told him.
He's
All
taking
right.
comp time there.
Moving on. Next up, Michael McGordy, 6, 10, and 14 Cypress Street, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to pave a 20 by 260-foot section of existing gravel road. Mr. What was I gonna say? All right, you have a butters card.
Yep.
Do you have a stick? Do you need an easel?
I didn't bring a stick.
No, it's okay. We have an easel over here.
Oh, okay, fine. I wasn't sure when I emailed.
Don't worry about
PDFs
it.
that
Sorry about
you
that.
were loading them.
No
Now I know.
worries, I should have.
Old school way.
It's okay. Jack just got there today.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is Bob Rogers, representing GAF Engineering and the Mulgurties this evening. This is a very simple street and drainage improvement project. Cypress Street is a private street, 20 feet wide. It's gravel in front of number 6, number 10, and number 14 Cypress Street. Those people are the ones, they're the owners and the applicants that are proposing this project. That have hired us and that have, done the work. So we're paving 20 feet wide, we're collecting it in a catch basin, we're treating the runoff, and we're infiltrating it in chambers. We were before this commission a little over a year ago, and it was very much the same project, except the McGurdy's on the north side of the street, who are the applicant owners, were in a disagreement with the Sandlins on the south side of the street. And so we never received official permission from the Sandlins to receive the order of conditions and to proceed with the work. So it's been a little over a year. The McGurdy's attorneys, the Sandlins attorneys get together. They reviewed the plans. The minor modification to the plans that we made was simply to create a single row of infiltrators versus a double row of those chambers, just to minimize the amount of temporary disturbance along that property line, the south side of the layout of Cypress Street. The Sandlin's attorney, Troy Wall Associates, Brian Wall, submitted a letter before we filed, submitted a letter on May 10th to the Conservation Administrator, copied Town Council, explaining, and I won't go into great detail with it, but explaining the position of the Sandlins, that they are very much in support of this project, and that they simply did not want to be held responsible
for the as-built and the certificate of compliance responsibilities. The last page, page 5 of Brian Wall's letter under section B states his legal opinion as to why the recording of the order of conditions is appropriate and sufficient for 610 and 14 Cypress Street. So we feel like the commission and the town engineering department had reviewed the engineering and the drainage system. You know, I did update everything and resubmitted everything, the drainage report, the notice of intent, the plans. And again, that design is essentially the same. We have on the record the assent of the Sandlins to construct this project. And so we would request that the commission close the public hearing this evening, vote to issue an order of conditions for the construction that's indicated on these plans.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have seen this project before. I do have a couple of questions, and I'll get to Attorney Wall's letter in one moment. Where you have the chambers,
Yes.
that, so I know that this is a big undeveloped property. Would that, having that there, would that block, or impede the construction of a driveway over them to get to the properties?
No, it would not.
If the properties would subdivide it?
Well, it would not. You know, so on the one hand, you know, I met at the site with their engineering representative, Tom Bunker.
Okay.
And so he and I, you know, basically agreed on what the change would be, and we specifically looked at where the single row of chambers would end versus the double row.
Okay.
So they're in full agreement with this plan, but also the chambers are H20 loading, and so with
Okay.
just,
Yep, no, that's fine. I just wanted to ask that question, because it's like the chambers are on the side of the road under the fee interest of the Sandlands versus McGordy's, who are proposing the project. I'm just wondering why they were sited on that side of the road as opposed to the other side of the,
well, that's the way the drainage pattern wants to be.
Space,
That's the way
okay.
we can make sure that we collect the water in the catch basin.
okay.
You're clarifying to make sure it doesn't impede in the
Yes,
future.
and any subdivision of that property where this might, not allow a driveway or something. So,
There's also utilities on the
Yeah.
other side of the road.
I think you had mentioned that the last time, that there were utilities on that side of the road. And forgive me, the commission, Attorney Wall's letter is downstairs. It came in a few months before, or a month or so before we actually received the filing. The letter does say the Sandlins gave permission to file the notice of intent through them. They don't need their name on the order, notice of intent through Brian. Obviously, they're fine with the McGordy's filing the notice. I think the issue comes down to the recording, correct, Mr. Rogers?
Well, so I did receive an email from you today, and
Yeah.
we spoke earlier about it. And I've also, thought about it a little bit since then. It seems to me that that's an issue for the land court section of the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds. If the commission feels that this is an environmentally beneficial project, that they can be comfortable issuing a positive order of conditions, then we've given you 3 vested landowners, not just one piece of property, but the 3 properties that are immediately adjacent on the north side of the road, that is being given as your legal surety to ensure that there has to be an order of conditions before a transfer of any of those properties. So from my perspective, it would be unnecessary to add more property owners into that mix. We have,
And I understand that, but,
So we
I think
feel like-
the last time, we had all the attorneys, everybody was involved, they're sending letters to me. So what I do, I get our attorneys involved, because
of course,
yep, and so, Attorney Harris's opinion at the last time we saw this was that the project could not go forward unless all the property owners along the road or along the project recorded that order of conditions on their properties. That, I think, was the sticking point for the abutters on the south side of the road. That said, Frank is looking into it now. He's looking into some land court issues that he feels that Attorney Harris may not have been aware of at the time of her opinion to this board. So we could close this hearing, Mr. Rogers, and we could make a condition that unless we hear from the land court or anything else, that until this order of conditions is recorded on every single property, construction cannot begin. Or we could continue it and wait for our council's opinion, which may be the same, or it may provide different guidance for this board. I think, I want the board to look at the project and its environmental impacts, but this is kind of the sticking point that I think kind of.
Yeah, I think we've gotten lost in the legal opinions.
Yeah,
And
the
so
legal
from a
opinions.
practical standpoint, we would like to receive that order of conditions and take it to the land court section of the Registry of Deeds. And if they accept it, then everybody goes away happy. So that's what
So
we
you'd
would like
accept
the
if we
opportunity.
condition that?
You like that?
Yes, absolutely, and the town gets the
condition that
protection.
everybody has to put it on their deed unless we hear otherwise.
It makes no sense for somebody 600 feet up the road to have their.
No, I'm talking just in the area of where the project
Right.
is.
And, okay, well, that's the Sandlands across the street.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
it's 6, 10, and 14 Cypress on the north side of the street.
6, 10, 14, 16, and 18?
Those 16 and 18 are outside of the commission's jurisdiction.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it was, again, that was
No,
very
that
much.
works for me. You don't have to go any further than that, outside of my jurisdiction. I have enough jurisdiction. We don't need any more.
So we think the proof is in the pudding. Do we have a good project? We think we do. Is it
I think you
envir-
do have a good project, but you are gonna have that condition, because we do have to base it on our past attorney's opinion. And if another opinion comes down that says that it does not need to be recorded on, it only needs to be recorded on the McGordy's, properties, that's fine. That's a legal opinion, okay? But the condition's gonna be on there to cover the board, and then we'll go from there.
So our attorneys don't see anything in the Wetlands Protection Act or the bylaw that would predicate, this additional encumbrance.
Our attorney's opinion was otherwise. I can't, that's all I can go on, Mr. Rogers, so. We can put the, we can put the condition on we can close the hearing, put the condition on the project, and then we can handle it afterwards. Or we can wait
Okay.
2 weeks and see what our attorney says. It really is, that's just, but I want that's gonna be up to you and the board, and then I want the board to look at the drainage project, okay? I have no concerns with the project. We've had our engineering department look at it, it's fine. Okay? It's just that legal part of it.
Give Harris back. Okay. Want to start?
Sure.
So just for a point of clarification then, so you're looking to impose a special legal condition, not a special condition for construction?
No, our orders of conditions state that the project has to be properly recorded at the Barnstable Registry of Deeds prior to construction. So what I'm saying is that our
We'll
past.
accept that.
No, our past attorney says that it has to be on all the properties that abut, or, if this drainage system is on the Sandland side of the road, and they legally have a fee interest in that road or own that part of the road, then that has to be recorded on their property. We went through this the last hearing. The reason you sent the letter a month ago was to try to get Frank's opinion. He wouldn't give the opinion until he saw the plan and the project, and he is not ready at this point to finalize his opinion. I apologize for that, but it just happened. he is actively looking into it, and I will have an answer by July 10th.
Okay, so we could anticipate that would be the only issue on July 10th?
Unless the board has an actual issue with your project, I think that might be our only issue, yes.
And we haven't asked any questions yet.
Certainly, yes, and nor has the audience.
Yeah, so, that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Certainly the improvements in the upper part of the road, and then transitioning into this piece, makes complete sense. Who's maintaining the property on the Sandlin side now? There's a grassy area that's developed over time or as a result of the previous construction?
I don't know who's been maintaining what. I've been to the site a few times, and I've obviously been working on this for maybe a year and a half, but I assume the Sandlins are maintaining their property and the McGurdy's are maintaining their property, and, you know, there's, other than snow plowing.
I have
there-
no idea. Somebody's cutting the lawn. Somebody was cutting the lawn. I was there. Yeah, but
Right,
anyway.
well, I'm not aware of.
The continuation of the, to the property below them, you have no, there's no interest in what might be number 4 or the turnaround at the end of the street?
No, sir. We start getting into the 100-foot riparian
Right.
zone to the river. You know, this is the steepest part of the road, and then when it
Yep.
flats out, you know, it's not an issue for stormwater erosion. So
Okay.
no, we ended the project, you know, last year in the same spot as this year. There's no intention to do any work further toward the river.
Okay. And the roadway will be the same as the, I'll call it the upper part of the roadway?
Yes, correct. Except we're gonna have Cape Cod berm along the southern edge for this 155, 200-foot piece, so that the water will
Yeah.
collect at the catch basin.
Okay, great. I think it would be an improvement. Thank you.
Peter?
In reviewing the checklist for stormwater report,
Yes.
the registered professional engineer certification, William Madden,
Yes, sir.
he has reviewed the stormwater report, including soil evaluation computations, long-term pollution prevention plan, the construction period of erosion and sedimentation control plan. That's kinds of sums it up for me. If
Thank
you
you.
don't have any comments, I'm all set.
Well, thank you. We put a lot of effort into this little stretch of road, and
Yeah.
and so all of those maintenance notes are on the plans, and all of those maintenance notes are directed to the McGordy's, not the Sandlins. And that's important when we're worried about whose deed it gets recorded against. You have 3 deeds that this is gonna get recorded against in land court. 5 or 10 others is unnecessary.
You good? Evan?
You don't have to convince us, we have nothing to say about the legal aspects.
Right.
However, I wasn't here, I heard about this. I wasn't at this hearing the last time. I was thankfully on vacation. But I understand there was an issue about the treehouse at the end. And that it was.
Platform.
Yeah, and it's, I know it's still there because I took a picture of it today.
Yes, certainly. We all know it's there, resting there. It's not nailed down. I don't know who put it up there, but that piece of property that it sits on is not a piece of property that's a part of this application. And it's not a piece of property that's gonna have a deed reference on the order of conditions.
Well, who
And so-
owns that piece of property?
Well, I provided a 100-foot abutters list, so it's gonna be one of those people. I'm not sure if it's physically in that strip of land that was the old street, or if it's on the piece of property between the old street and the river. However, if that's the concern, then it should be its own separate.
Okay, that's fine.
We attempted to make it its own separate issue, and the McGordy's didn't respond. We'd also do have a picture of one of the McGordy's in the treehouse, so please advise your clients to take it down. Thank you.
So are we gonna what's your pleasure? Are we going to, you wanna continue it until you have our attorney's opinion? Or do you wanna have it, close it with the condition that you have to deal with land court?
I think we'd like you to close tonight. We'd like you to close so that you can carefully consider whether you really want to put that condition in of,
We won't.
you know. So yes, we would like you to close. There doesn't seem to be any more information that we can provide.
See if anybody else wants to
Take a
comment.
motion, and then we're,
Oh, okay, then I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement. Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Any public comment?
Hi, my name is Trent Torrance-Sandlin. My family owns a property on the south side of Cypress Street. I was who you saw mowing.
Oh, good.
I am a trustee of the Sandlin Family Realty Trust. I am speaking tonight on behalf of my brothers Wayne, Glenn, Brian, and my sister Nancy. We approve the plan submitted with the notice of intent, and we support the McGurdy's to pave a 260-foot portion of Cypress Street. My family has paved and constructed drainage for the first 572 feet of Cypress Street, which did not require this board's approval. As property owners on a private road, my family had a right to make improvements to the road after having our neighbors approve of our plan. The McGurdy's have that same right to make improvements to the street, and we support their project. My family's attorney is of the same opinion and has explained his opinion in a written letter to this board. Between the two projects, Cypress Street will be one of the better roads abutting Little Pond. Thank you.
Any other comments?
My name is Mike McGurdy. I'm one of the applicants. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Sandlin for taking his time and coming down here and supporting the project. It's been a long time coming, and it's been a loggerhead, but I truly appreciate Mr. Sandlin coming down, as I said. I hope the board would support this and let the road get finished so that everyone on the street can move on with their lives, so that we can get this over with. It's a good project. It's a great company that came out and did the work for us, and Bob's been great. So I want to thank the board. I just hope for your support so we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of closing the hearing, take it under advisement, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Rogers.
Next up, College Light Opera Company, Inc., 54 Chappaquoit Road, West Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a new rehearsal hall administrative building, upgrade to a single denitrifying septic system, construction of an ADA accessible ramp, construction, I think this is supposed to say of an attached two-car garage for students, driveway parking reconfiguration, landscape modifications, mitigation and restoration plantings, and all associated clearing, excavating, utilities, landscaping, and grading. Tim, do you have cards?
Yes, I do.
Excellent. Hot, cold, hot, cold.
It's hot and cold.
Thank you. Did Mike draw those for you? Thank you.
Oh, I think
Thank you, Tim.
if think he wants it framed in your office, Jen.
Good evening. For the record, Tim Santos from Holmes & McGrath, representing the applicant. Property is located at 54 Chappaquiddick Road in West Falmouth. It is owned and operated by the College Light Opera Company. It's currently developed with 5 dwellings on it. We have the main dwelling in the middle here, which they call the inn. And then we have 4 outhouses, which are student housing. The resource areas on or within 100 feet of the property are salt marsh associated with Chappaquiddick Harbor on the west side of the property, as well as the north side of Chappaquiddick Road. There's a coastal bank that runs along the lower part of the driveway, the northwest portion, as well as a freshwater bordering vegetated wetland associated with the pond, and the entire property is located in land subject to coastal storm flowage. So we're here tonight looking for approval to construct a new rehearsal barn. Right now, the company uses the main building for a portion of student housing and staff. There's a kitchen located in it. They use it for rehearsal, for storage of equipment and costumes, and for practicing. So students live not only within the main building, but they also live within student housing 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the company is proposing to construct a new rehearsal barn. The rehearsal barn will be used for rehearsing, as well as storage of equipment, costumes, and practicing. So there's no increase in use on the site. There's 90 students and staff. Basically, we're trying to build a new facility to rehearse and for storage, so that everything's not jammed into the main building. So that's what this rehearsal barn is proposed for. Currently, right now, the main, as far as septic systems go, the main inn is serviced by 2, let me go back to the other screen for a minute. Serviced by 2 cesspools. Student housing 1 and 2 is serviced by a Title V compliant system. Student housing 3 is serviced by a Title V system, and student housing 4 is serviced by 2 cesspools as well. So part of this proposal is also to abandon all of the existing septic system and to construct a new denitrification system. It's called the Santos system. Maureen Thomas is here from the Buzzards Bay Coalition as well, that can address any questions you might have on that or the project itself. The septic system has gone before the Board of Health. We went last Monday and the Board of Health approved that portion of the project. So this is our next step in many board approvals prior to obtaining a building permit, hopefully. So all of the existing dwellings that do not have dry wells will be added to help control roof runoff, as shown on the plan. As far as the existing parking lots go, there's 3 existing curb cuts. The main entrance here, there's a loop, and this is currently where the majority of the cars are parked, as well as the lawn. We are proposing to install a leaching trench along the southern side of this parking lot and a leaching pit to contain that runoff from going into the resource areas. And we're also proposing a shallow drainage swale at this main entrance on Chappaquiddick Road. This far entrance to the west, this is a gravel driveway that wraps around back. In accordance with the redevelopment guidelines, there is an increase of 46 square feet within buffer zone A, and there is an increase, I'm gonna come down here, hold on a second, sorry. So So the first sheet here, and you have copies of these as well, the yellow is the existing structures within it, buffer zone A, and the pink is the existing structures within buffer zone B. So we have the existing versus the proposed, and there's a 46 square foot increase in A, and I believe it's a 3,400 square feet in B. So we are proposing mitigation plantings both along this area in zone A, and that's 400 and Jen, where's the little plus? To zoom in.
Isn't it on the top there?
It's not there.
Right, over, no?
485 square feet.
Oh, it's right on the top.
Yeah, it's not there for some reason, but I think I can see it now. We have 485 square feet of mitigation plantings in this area to fill buffer zone A, associated with the salt marsh to the north side, and then 7,870 square feet of mitigation plantings associated with the pond. There's an old order of conditions from 2003 when student housing 1 and 2 were reconstructed. At that time, that compliance was never closed out, so when we researched the files and spoke with staff, we've included that mitigation plantings into the number proposed here so that it would help close out that old order, as well as supply the requirement of plantings for the new project that's before you. So the total number of mitigation plantings is 8,355. We do have three restoration areas, 2 along the pond. This area currently has invasives, and we're proposing to remove them and replant them. This area down it's to the east of student housing 3 is a cleared area that will be restored. And then we are proposing 1,000 square feet of restoration plantings in between student housing number 1 and 2 for, there is existing vegetation that's located to the west of the proposed rehearsal barn. It's made up of like knotweed and other invasives and vines that we're looking to take out of that area and put in some natural shrubs. We are also proposing a garage on student housing number 4. The garage will be used to store companies' cars, bikes, other storage type stuff in the winter months. So I will go through one thing on the septic because it's a major part of our project as well. There are 6 tanks located in this area adjacent to the main building. Those tanks are in the groundwater table. We have submitted a dewatering report. So the plan is to install a series of well points surrounding these tanks, and the groundwater in that area will be pumped down in order to get the tanks in a dry environment. We'll go through a frac tank, a filtration system, and then from that filtration system, it will be pumped out onto a raft and dewatered through a dewatering bag. We have spoken with DMF about this. We have spoken with the harbor master about it. We have support from the harbor master, provided we get approval from your board, and DMF issued a letter with no concerns. We addressed all of their concerns in that regard. So there is a wide variety of consultants with me that can answer your questions in regard to the building, septic system, dewatering, plantings. So I'll open it up to the board for any questions.
Specifically. Did DMF, issue anything about the dewatering?
That was the letter they issued.
Yeah.
And they knew about the dewatering?
They knew about it.
Yeah, they just came out.
I know, I was just looking for the specific. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the only concern I would have would be about the dewatering. So Tim, I'm gonna read you something that, and I don't know, I thought I had sent this over to you. Jim McLaughlin had sent this to me at the end of, May, on the March 28th dewatering plan, the
Thank you.
conceptual one we set. Did you add, well points in there at all? He just says, we've looked over the conceptual dewatering plan dated March 28th, prepared by LRT. As noted in the conceptual plan, under key assumptions, the influent rate is estimated at 300 gallons per minute. Often the estimated rate is less than what is actually encountered. This usually becomes apparent after excavation is open and there is a need for less than ideal supplemental pumping to occur quickly. As a suggestion to address this issue is to have adequate additional pumps, tanks, and filters on site ready to be deployed in an event more than 300 gallons per minute is needed to dewater the excavation. A second suggestion would be to install monitoring wells at a few locations and begin the well point pumping to verify the groundwater can be lowered to the desired elevation placed prior to excavation. What changed between the March 28th dewatering plan and the May 22nd dewatering plan?
I'm gonna let Kim address
That's fine.
those concerns.
Sorry, Kim.
Hi, my name's Kim Gravel. I'm with Lockwood Remediation Technologies. I am the dewatering and water treatment consultant for the project. The only thing that changed in that plan was the final dewatering effluent location. We had proposed a series of options and then settled on the outfall to the marsh, or not the marsh, the
pond.
harbor.
Okay, so those, you would be willing to add the additional pumps and everything, all the equipment on site to address our engineer's concern?
And we already have monitoring
New
wells
wells.
installed.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. I've gone over this project many times with Tim, so I don't have any additional questions right now, Mr. Chairman.
Tim, I'm sorry, you said, Greg endorsed that plan?
We've met with Greg preliminarily in regard to the aspect, and he did not have an issue with it out on a temporary float. But obviously we couldn't apply for a seasonal, I think it'd be a swim float. I'm not sure what the permit is, but that's
10A mooring.
10A mooring. That's what we talked about. So obviously we can't apply for that until we got some type of conservation approval, but he did endorse that, yes.
Thank you. Do you want to start?
Sure.
Of course you do.
I have no questions.
Come on.
Go.
No, but I do
Let it
wanna,
go.
I do wanna point out that I know you've put a lot of work into this, as well as other town boards cooperating on this project and on several projects tonight. And a number of people mentioned the other night how appreciative we are of having a knowledgeable staff. So I just wanna make that comment.
And I will thank staff. I was gonna thank them at the end. We've probably met with Jen, Brendan, and Kevin, I think 4 times on this, and we've seen various iterations of it. So they were very helpful to get us to this point, to a project that we believe meets your regulations, and
Well,
hopefully can be approvable.
It's a complex site.
Yes,
and-
yes.
And, but it's a nice upgrade for the area.
Each tree's gonna.
That's all. Maybe later.
Yeah. Kevin?
I would be reluctant to give any technical questions or comments because I don't know how you're gonna pull it off, but good luck to you and the Red Sox.
All right. I think it's a good, well thought-through project. No questions.
A lot of parts.
Yeah.
A lot of parts. Steve?
No, I felt the same way. I have driven by it, obviously, well, not obviously, but many, many times, and thought the entire property was that one structure that you can see, and having a chance to walk around, and I appreciate the staff allowing me on a rainy day to walk around their property, but it's an impressive project. I know nothing about dewatering until I read your report, but I enjoyed reading it, and it sounds like a heck of a challenge. 3 feet below the level of the, wow. Okay.
So are
that's
you
all I-
volunteering to be the commission
Monitoring.
monitor? and
Absolutely,
learn about it?
I'd love to monitor it.
Peter?
Nothing.
No further questions. It's a good project.
Tim, you said the Board of Health hasn't reviewed the.
The Board of Health has reviewed it last Monday, they closed it,
Okay.
and they approved it.
Okay, and this new septic system's been for the entire
The
property?
entire property, correct?
Crazy.
Crazy.
One question. Will the pond look like this when it's done?
Hopefully.
Lou? Okay.
We think so. I'll make a motion, close the hearing, and take it under advisement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Any public comments?
My name is Kristen Shearer, and I live on 30 Chapcoit Road, and I have the privilege of living immediately right next door to College Light Opera Company.
You get free tickets?
I actually enjoy the shows, so we actually go. So we love Clock. We support Clock. We go to their shows. We love all of it. It has nothing to do with any of that. One of the largest concerns that I have, we live it. We're here 365 days a year. In the fall and the winter, when everyone disappears and we hear the chainsaws come out and we go over and they're cutting down trees around that beautiful pond that actually is not blue, but it's green, that houses immense amount of blue heron and egrets every single night, every night. And we see the slow changes along the harbor front of cut trees and the animals that are being displaced. When we upgraded our home, we did it as a forever home. My husband's family has been there for 50 years. Our children are 5 generations of Falmouth. We are not here for short term, we are here for long term. And we did that as a forever home. And when we walk out and we take pictures all the time of the birds and the vegetation, and Tim, I know they do beautiful work, I've seen it. I'm really hoping that this is accounted for what's gonna happen to this natural habitat. This is a natural habitat. I'm not against what they're doing. I think it's wonderful. I think what Clock does is lovely. But I'm very passionate about the community and my neighborhood and the animals which surround the beautiful West Falmouth Harbor. They've already removed some trees around the side of the pond, closest to Clock on the kitchen side, that used to be full-grown trees that used to be nesting grounds for some of these birds. And those are gone now. And my fear is that if the removal of all of that buffer around the pond is removed, this whole natural habitat is gonna be destroyed. So my concern is not the project, it's that pond area where they like to remove the invasive, where they like to improve it and make it blue, where it's actually that color. Snapping turtles, box turtles, they come out every year, they walk across the lawn and they lay their eggs. So these are photos that if you'd like to have, and I can leave with you to add to the project. But I am really concerned about the pond area. I think it's gonna be a huge impact on the natural habitat that we so love. So I just.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did this require natural heritage?
Tim, did you send us, it didn't require natural heritage? Okay.
Didn't require it?
Vast amount of wildlife. This is not a little amount of wildlife, it's a vast amount of wildlife.
Can I see those, Betsy? need you to label. What are you looking for, Bets?
Just to see if there's anything about natural heritage.
The maps are there.
Okay.
Not page number, but the maps.
Okay.
So we're good? Not we're good.
Yeah, we might put a condition in to take special care if you actually did see box turtles there.
I'm not a specialist, I'm not a scientist, I have a degree in nothing. But I will tell you, the snapping turtles that come out and lay their eggs, there's on the picture that Jennifer has of the tree, there's actual turtles on those trees in
Those
the pond
Those are probably painted turtles.
that you can see. There's box turtles, there's blue heron, there's egrets, I can't tell you what comes out of there. It's truly, I'm concerned, I'm extremely concerned, and I know that it's a beautiful project, and again, I think it's wonderful, but I really think we need to take into account the impact that this is gonna have on that specific area. I mean, we go out there, we walk down a little path that's been there forever, right next to building the housing 3 there, and the kids go down and look, they fly in every night over your head, and they just land there every single night. I mean, that's their natural migration, that's where they go.
Thank you.
It's like, this is amazing, I've never seen this anyplace else in town. These rookeries.
That's why we live here.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, can you do me a favor? Can you tell me which page your limit of work is on? I'm looking for it real quick.
I'm gonna have to get the big set of plans, because I can't.
Mitigation plan. I'm gonna think it's gonna be on 6, right? 4. Can't.
It's on C4.
Okay.
Um,
It's not on your legend, though? Am I just missing it real quick?
Yeah, it's not in the legend, but it is shown on C4.
Super helpful.
And just in regard to the buffer to the pond, we are proposing mitigation plantings to help increase that buffer. The pond to the north, and we are proposing restoration in this area here where some clearing had been done, and College Light Opera Company realizes that, and that's part of the reason why we're showing the restoration here on this plan now, to help increase that buffer.
Am I allowed to ask him a question?
Yes.
I don't know, I didn't know if I was allowed. So when you say, the mitigation plantings, is that before or after you remove?
Okay.
I mean, are you planning on removing all of that? Okay.
So this dark green area right here is mitigation plantings, and currently, right now, that area is lawn. So we're proposing to convert this area that was developed many, many, many years ago and bring it back to a natural state with
So we want to make sure all that work's going on.
the mitigation plantings.
So everything between the mitigation and the water is gonna
It will remain as is.
Nothing is being around the pond?
That is
nothing
correct.
being
Nothing
moved?
around the pond is proposed to be touched.
So nothing around the pond is
The
proposed?
the
Are you
o-
doing invasive removal
Yes,
around the pond?
the only area is, see this area right here where my little happy hand is? That area right there currently has invasives, and they're proposing to remove those invasives and plant it with natural woody shrubs. That's the only area.
Thank you. Any more public comments?
About the dewatering. So just reading through the proposal.
You are?
I am Diane Cassidy. I'm a neighbor, and it looked like there was an enormous amount of water that would need to be removed and filtered. And is that what you're saying, that the Board of Health has already agreed to this? Because it seems like.
No, that's-
about the septic system. Okay, the septic system, not the dewatering. Well, I'm just concerned about its effect on both the harbor and any water source around there, because if, like, reading the description, it seems like a monumental task. And if it fails, what happens? I mean, has this ever been done quite
Well-
like this before?
I mean, that piece of it's been reviewed by the harbor master, or is under review, and by DMF, so,
Division
And
of
our
Marine
engineering
Fisheries.
department.
Division of
Sorry,
Marine
yeah.
Fisheries. And they think it's gonna work?
they're okay with it.
Okay, and what about rainwater drainage? Do they think that their proposal for that is proper for that property? It looked like, in part of their proposal, there was a lot of discussion about rainwater drainage and where all the water was
Oh.
gonna go. And I'm not sure where it would all come from, but it seemed like it was a concern. They're improving it by
They are.
putting in, right now, apparently, the rainwater just sheets off onto the ground, and now it'll be collected and put in dry wells. Okay.
So it'll be contained.
So what's the next step for the dewatering, and who would approve that?
We would.
You would approve. Thank you. Based on comments from our engineering department.
Doug Shearer, also at 30 Chappaquay Road. Kristen went over most of the pictures, so I'm fully on board with her. Love the area. She's the newest member of the family. We've had an ongoing battle back and forth. I still have yet to fully decide if I'm pro or against, but I do have some concerns that falls under your jurisdiction. On the dewatering side of it, you said there was gonna be a float. This is the first I've heard of that end of it. So there's gonna be a swim float out in the harbor. My concern there would be at low tide, you have about 6 inches of water all along there until you hit the channel, which is the only access in under the bridge there. So it's gonna be very hard to put a swim float any place that is not going to be sitting on the bottom and out of the channel at the same time. So you're gonna have access to navigation issues for every home at the end of West Falmouth Harbor at that end. So that would be a concern of mine as well. I know I'm not ever gonna even attempt to get a dock permitted there for those issues and that reason. Going back to the pond, yes, a lot of the invasive species have already been removed. They've been being removed for the last couple of years. If new plantings go in there, all the better. It'll clean up the site. I've been there on and off for 40-plus years. They have, excuse me, the first 15 years I was there, the groundskeeper and I played hockey on the pond every winter. He did a fantastic job of maintaining the property, maintaining the plantings. A lot of it was done prior to Clark being there. Was when the Lilies owned the property. It was spectacular. You could see all the overgrown plants. It is an absolute beautiful site that was not maintained for the last 30 years or so. I would be concerned on plantings and the upkeep being done, and I hope that would be put in, something into the order of conditions. And now that I look at the plan, I should have come and hired you when I did the renovation of our house, because my A and B zones and tops of coastal banks do not match up to what's on this plan. My mitigation would have been about a third of what I was given. So when I come back from my compliance hearing, I'd love to use his plan instead of mine if I could, for the delineation of where the top of the coastal bank is from the pond, where the pond A and B zones are, and coming up from, yeah, the coastal bank's here. In my yard, it's about here. So I don't know where it disappears along here. You know, again, even with the mitigation plantings you have, if that agrees with the lines I have on my plans, it's a huge improvement already. I doubt it's enough if BSS had done the plan, but we both are in support of Clock. They do good work. I pray that it stays at 90 students, and I pray that what was presented to the community, that it doesn't get used off-season as a community hall and more traffic comes in, which was one of their funding options at one point. That may or may not have gone away. It's not your jurisdiction, but if all of a sudden the parking has to double, you know, I own a commercial business. If I had a tenth of that, I would be over 100 parking spots, not 30. So that's another concern of mine. 34 parking spots, I think, is what it says it's required for, what, probably 50,000 square feet of floor area. It doesn't seem like enough to me. And then they're gonna run out of place to do the plantings. So those are my concerns, issues. Again, it sounds like it's gonna be a much more improved site, which I'm all for. The denitrification will help clean up the harbor. That's a huge plus. They keep their windows closed when they're singing scales, it's gold. They don't, go back to yelling and screaming, but that has nothing to do with you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
He brought up a question, and I have a question. And it's for Tim. That is, what season is the dewatering gonna be done?
So, in regard to the dewatering, just gonna go back to the yellow because it's just easier to see. So when we spoke with the contractor estimated 3 to 4 weeks for the installation of these tanks in this area. We're hoping to start construction in the winter, like October, November, and the tanks are one of the first things that's gonna go in, so it's gonna be done during the winter months.
So presumably, there's not gonna be that much boating.
So we did talk about that with Greg, and we talked about it being done during the winter months to cause the least disturbance to any type of recreational activity.
So it's not a permanent structure out there?
No, absolutely not.
All right, I
Absolutely not.
misunderstood. All
And
right.
Greg
I
will-
apologize.
And Greg will
It's a
talk about where
temporary
it's
float.
sited.
Okay,
The temporary float.
my misunderstanding.
Yeah, we probably should have said that.
Only for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just for the installation.
Not a problem.
Yeah, we definitely planned on doing that during the winter
Let's hope it's
months.
not a problem.
Right.
No,
That
that's
occurred to me.
had to be brought up. Any further public comments? All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing, take it under advisement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend. Have a great 4th of July.
What a nice audience. So quiet.
Oh, I didn't know if you needed some. I have multiple cards. Is your last name Shearer, S-H-E-A?
I'm gonna give them a minute to clear out.
I'm gonna look at your plan,
No,
your plan.
couldn't find the abutters list.
We have.
They're different scales.
Huh?
Anytime.
We're gonna take 2 minutes. We're back.
We agree.
Okay, next up, continued hearings under a notice of intent. Town of Falmouth has been continued to 7/10. Don't need to read that, right?
Courtney, give that to Betsy.
Next up, request for a hearing under a certificate of compliance. Tim Skelly, 258 Edgewater Drive
Thank you.
East, East Falmouth, Mass., requesting a certificate of compliance for DEP number 25-1600.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Mike Forselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I'm joined tonight by Tim Skelly, the property owner. This is a little unique tonight. You typically don't review certificates of compliance, but this is, like I said, a little bit unique. We met with staff and talked some things through, and they didn't feel comfortable issuing a certificate of compliance for what we're here for tonight, which is the existing dock at the property. So the Skelly's on the property at 258 Edgewater Drive East. and it's been in the family for 2 generations now. The current generation just acquired ownership in the recent past, and it came to their attention at that time that there was an old order of conditions allowing a dock to be constructed on the property that still had an open order and they had not received a certificate of compliance. The dock is so old that it was issued a Chapter 91 license in 1975. It was constructed, was issued that old order of conditions back then. It was built, it was severely damaged during Hurricane Bob in 1991, and it was received an order of conditions to be reconstructed at that point, at which time it was reconstructed. When the Skelleys did go out, file for a certificate of compliance, the Conservation Commission staff found some deficiencies, and they issued a letter to Mr. Skelly, and he's addressed most of them, but they included the installation of a seasonal float that was never approved, that was removed, and there was one additional piling that was at the very end of the fixed portion of the pier that was never approved, that has also been removed. So what it comes down to now is that the fixed pier was not constructed in, at the same width or length. If you look closely at this exhibit that I have provided, and you also have in your file, I've provided a blow-up. The licensed structure is shown in the outline in red. It was approved to be 6 foot wide, and it had an overall length from where I'm pointing from here. It had an overall length approved to 50. Instead, when it was rebuilt after Hurricane Bob, it was built at a narrow width, but approximately 6 feet longer. What also isn't currently built is there was a ramp from here leading to the riprap that was licensed and approved at 6 foot wide and 15 feet long. So your staff didn't feel comfortable allowing this, it's basically a 5 to 6 foot extension from what was approved in 1975. They didn't feel comfortable issuing a certificate of compliance for that. We're hoping that you would be able to see fit that since it's been in the water since 1991 and has been used and has an actual overall smaller footprint because it wasn't constructed to the width it was approved to be constructed at, that you would not mandate that this end be removed. Some facts about the size of it: the actual area of the pier is 228 square feet. It's 4 by 57. The original approved pier was 4 foot wide by 50. I'm sorry, 6 foot wide by 50 plus the 6 foot wide by 15 foot ramp. So the overall size of the existing pier is actually 80 square feet smaller in footprint. It is about 6 feet longer. What was it?
The beach, goes over the beach.
Well, why don't you say it?
One of the other things, I'm Tim Skelly, I'm the property owner. My father bought the property in '51, and my brother and I bought it from my mother's estate last June. And when we were doing the closing, we did a title search on it and found the order of conditions. So we were kind of shocked to learn that this was still hanging out there. After Hurricane Bob, I was actually living in New York at the time, and my late brother Brian got together with Phil Warmel, who's now deceased, and somehow they came up with a plan and they built what's there now. We had no clue that there was an open order of condition. But over the years, over the last 15 or 20 years, I believe you have satellite imagery of the property. You can see that the beach is dramatically filled in, and the dock is relatively unusable. There isn't enough water there to put any size boat at all. At low tide, the beach extends out past the end of the dock, so it's basically unusable at this point. And as Mike was requested, we're just requesting that to have this complied with, and because of certain reasons, we've decided, my brother and I, to sell the property. We have it listed, we have an offer on the property right now, and one of the conditions is that we have to clear up this order of condition from 1992.
Thank you.
We're happy to answer any questions.
Jen?
Mr. Skelly, where are the three floats that were removed?
As I stated in our prior meeting, they're in Edgartown right now, never to be seen again.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I don't remember everything everybody tells me in prior meetings. I have a lot of meetings. Okay, so that was one of my concerns, was if we grant compliance, what are our assurances that the three floats are not gonna appear again? Your the new current property, potential property owners, potential buyers, are they aware that they can't add floats to the end? They are?
Very much so, yep.
Are they gonna be seeking a new dock if this one is unusable? Mike, more business for you?
We haven't had any discussions about that. It would be tricky, shellfish survey, the length of the dock, I don't know.
Isn't a velocity zone over there?
Oh,
It
and it's
is?
also in a velocity zone, yeah.
That's
so.
great.
That's why we didn't attempt.
Yeah, okay. All right, you all read the staff report. I mean, the staff, we just because of the length difference and everything, the staff's hands were tied. We couldn't issue compliance. That's why there is a provision in the regulations for them to hold a hearing. So,
Okay.
you have all the information you need.
Mike, the ramp doesn't exist, correct?
The ramp does not exist,
No.
correct. What exists today is a small set of steps at the end and a path that meanders through the dune. This ramp was never constructed.
So, okay. Just your footage doesn't add up. I mean, you're okay, I'm not disputing that. Well, you're approved for 375 square feet, correct? The original,
Yeah, well, it was 6 foot wide by, with the ramp, 6 foot wide by 65 feet long.
yeah.
Yeah.
okay. I'm just splitting hairs.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have a problem with this. I mean, I understand why staff couldn't give you a certificate. I mean, it's,
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way.
it's, they did what they had to do, so.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't have an issue with this. Courtney, would you like to start?
No, and I mean, if we issue compliance on this, there's no way that this order sets a precedent that they can, for example, go back and connect the riprap up because the old license allowed for, and I just want to make sure that.
I can answer that. Your regulations would prohibit it because it's in a velocity zone,
Yeah.
regardless of the license.
I'm fine.
Yeah, and if I may, kind of on that note is, if we issue the compliance, it would be based on that drawing of what exists today,
Correct.
and period. So if new owners wanted to do anything, it would have to be a whole new application.
Absolutely.
And it would have nothing to do with,
Have nothing to
it'd
do
be
with
based
this.
on
would be-
this existing.
Nope, this would be closed out, and Mike just went on record that he doesn't believe it could be a ramp
I would
because it would be prohibited
discourage-
under a velocity zone.
I would discourage any applications, unfortunately.
I can't wait till you say when you try to permit the new dock, Mike.
It's in a velocity zone.
Yeah, you know,
All
the
right, Courtney, do
velocity
you have
zone
anything
issue's
else?
tough. It really is tough. It's unfortunate, but it's tough.
I'm good.
Kevin?
No, I was a little confused because the plan you use is dated in March, and I assume that's the when there was work done out there.
Well, the original plan date, you've seen this on a couple of other occasions, we just kept building on the plan. The
Yeah.
original
Yeah,
plan
okay.
date for work,
There was some riprap work done and stuff?
Yes.
Fine. Okay, I'm fine.
Betsy?
I don't have any problem. It's nice to see, I mean, not so nice for you, but nice to see that that area that's built out has all vegetated.
Yep, yes.
Looks great, looks,
We'll protect the property.
yeah, looks good.
Steve?
Kind of anticlimactic after waiting for what, 3.5 hours?
Like I said, the gong show book.
Yeah, well, as long as it doesn't get turned down, he'd be okay.
Yeah, even if you can't take a boat on it, it's nice to have a dock out into the water there,
Not a lot of-
particularly there.
Yeah, not a lot of houses have big beaches like that either.
Yeah,
I have no problem with it.
Sell the beach.
yeah.
Peter?
I'm all set.
Excellent.
I'll make a motion to,
order an issue of compliance.
certificate
Order-
of compliance based on the existing conditions.
Courtney was first.
No, I was.
Yeah.
Then I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a
Well,
second.
Steve and I'll second together.
We have a motion and a second
silly.
to issue a certificate of compliance for 25-1600. Any further comments from the board? No, Betsy. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Sorry, you gotta sell it.
Thank you,
Guys,
appreciate
then
it,
I'm gonna need your signature on one more document.
Thank
and have a good night.
Coming back from Nantucket.
Who knows?
When he sobers up. Make a motion to adjourn.
Just a little
No,
feisty
we-
tonight, aren't you, Steve?
One more.
Because he was coming out to do compliance on our seawall repair,
Enforcement order.
but he said he didn't have enough time to review Mike's document.
No, he's at a conference today. He's at a
That's what
con- he's at the.
Wait a minute, a conference?
He's learning how to write
on
compliances.
Nantucket in
It-
June?
That's what he
It's the
tells us.
coastal
That's what he
conference.
tells you, thank you.
No, it's the coastal conference.
Next up, hearings under an enforcement order. David Howe, Lot 479 Vineyard Street, Falmouth, Mass., for altering a coastal beach which is resource area that is under the protection of the Wetlands Protection Act 310 CMR 10.27 and Falmouth Wetland Regulations 10.27.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, after the presentation after the abutters came in and addressed the board, you had requested that the staff send a violation letter to Mr. Howe. I did that. You all saw his June 20th response. Going back through the file, there are some, he did respond. I can clarify and correct some of, in his letter, so we did find the 24-hour beach notice. So when we said 24 hours for beach nourishment activities, we did locate that, so that's no longer an issue. We did approve that contractor, so that's not an issue. We still do not have the beach, thank you very much, Peter. We still do not have the surveys that were required under the beach nourishment, special condition number 7. We know, or we're told they were done by the engineer, but we never received them. So we can reach out to the engineer, see if they can send us a, set of that. A set of the beach profiles that were done. And special condition number 10, they did reestablish those stakes this year, but they had not marked that edge of dune prior to this. And then special condition number 9, raking and cleaning of the beach, 10% of the rack line shall remain on the, to provide wildlife habitat for the birds. And he states that he periodically rakes the beach, most frequently than weekly, as the order of conditions allow. It does not occur year-round, but it does occur weekly in the summer seasons.
Well, that's when the birds are there.
I know, I understand that. Another thing that we had identified in that letter is the, hang on, let me find that letter. It's under here, is the unpermitted alteration of the coastal beach, which is what the abutter was most concerned about using the beach sorting machine. In response to this letter, I spoke with Jamie, the chairman. We sent him an additional letter on yesterday. We received this on the 20th. I sent him a letter on yesterday, and we said that the chairman would be willing to continue the hearing until July 10th to give the commission the opportunity to request he'd like to come in when he is able to, which would be, according to him, according to Mr. Howe, he is unable on his doctor's advice to do anything until the end of August. So Jamie wanted to give the board the opportunity.
With the condition.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
So Jamie wanted to give this board the opportunity to consider that continuance request till the end of August, but with the with the contingent that all activities related to the order of condition in the beach cleaning machine cease and desist until the issues can be addressed. We stressed to Mr. Howe that this was just a hearing, that he was able to come in and address the letter we had sent him. I've addressed some of the issues, but we still have the beach sorting machine and some of the, as Betsy said, I know I'm getting there, Betsy, some of the other allegations of the alteration of the coastal beach. Jamie offered to meet him on site with the staff and his representatives so that, the chairman could better understand his concerns and the matters out there. We received a response today, and you all saw the response today. He wants this particular letter rescinded. So here we are. The staff is not really quite sure what the alterations are out there, if any, because we have not had the opportunity to fully inspect the site. But we do
And that's the
know-
biggest issue,
That's the
really, is
biggest
because
issue.
all these things are it's alleged, and we haven't been able to confirm whether.
We haven't been able to
Hold
confirm
that
it
thought.
because every time we are able to go on the property, we are asked to leave almost immediately. So, here we are. So I
Right.
guess at this point, we have. an
Who's
issue-
asking you to leave?
The property owner,
This guy?
correct. So you all read the letter that we received late today,
I
and
didn't
here
see
we
it.
are.
You have it.
Oh, I have all of them, Courtney. This is the one we received today. So, I did go back through, I went back through the file, I tried to find everything I could,
Betsy?
So, I went to the site today, I did not go on the site, I parked on the road, and I took several pictures. And it's, number one, it's clear that sand was put all over dune grass to extend the beach inland. And so an area that would have had dune grass and started building up a dune is now part of the beach. And the other aspect, I urge everybody to go out there, the other aspect is 2/3 of the beach is just granular sand, and then the other third of the beach are cobbles. And so, parallel to one another, going down into the water. So
Betsy, show them your pictures.
I just have it on my phone.
Oh, you can't?
It's on my phone. Well, I could show it, I'll put it in the record tomorrow.
Okay.
Does everybody have their cell phone? I can just. Oh, I'll show you. You've seen them, right?
I have it, yeah, actually, I could.
I visited the site Sunday,
Did you notice that?
not the dune grass,
You
because I wouldn't have known I was.
talk to Frank about this. You specialize in pieces.
Yes, I specialize in invasives.
Okay,
Just because
so
it
this is
sounds like
the
this guy's getting ready for
neighbors
litigation.
all the way down, and you see how the
No, your finger's in the way, I can't see it.
I mean,
Thank you.
See how the dune grass
Yeah.
comes in?
I was just saying, I mean, just reading that, I mean,
Comes
it
in
sounds
and
like
it
the guy
traps the
wants to
sand,
pick
and
a
that's
fight.
what forms,
And
that's what forms the dune.
So-
So that all should be
We'll
over.
wait until Betsy's done.
Yeah.
And then I'll.
But this is all
Can we
been
wrap this
buried.
up?
You asked me
One
to show
other
them.
than.
Okay,
I asked you to pass them
But look,
down.
this is all,
James
yeah.
is to
it's all
sign this.
cobble.
Well, that's as far as
Courtney,
you got
sign
with
that.
the sand, huh?
We only have 3 signatures.
Right.
All the cobble there. I think he dumped it.
Yeah. He didn't want to use that part of the beach.
Yeah.
all the other ones are good.
But I haven't heard any loud music blasting out in the neighborhood.
No bright lights?
Kidding.
Here's the neighbor's beach, right?
Yeah.
Here's the neighbor's beach, and this is, so all this area should be dune
He has
grass.
a
Should be,
beautiful set of,
you
Yep.
know,
Betsy, send me those
from the
pictures, please.
carousel.
I will.
Email them
Puts
to
that
me.
on the porch when they're there.
Sure, Courtney.
So, I mean, I don't know what you would, I don't know what the board would like to do. We can continue it till July 10th, if you'd like, to try to reach out to Mr. Howe
mean, are there-
again. Or
You have other photos
we
here?
can continue it to the end of August, or we can address it now. It really is up to the board.
Well-
I mean, you've given him all, you know, many opportunities to address the board.
I would like us to have the opportunity to go out there, but we did kind of ask that in that letter. And while he didn't specifically say no, he didn't address that
Correct.
in itself. My opinion, it's only mine, is that we continue it to the next meeting, and in the meantime, try to get permission to go out there, you know, and actually do a site visit. I'm not crazy about continuing it until the end of August, unless he agreed, which he hasn't, to cease everything, you know. I wouldn't have a problem with that, because then at least if there's any violations, it's not continuing them. So, anyway, that's what I was thinking, and I'm just one. So I'm gonna start with Courtney, because he was asked first. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that this might be time to reach out to Frank and see what his feeling about how we best proceed here, because,
I can do that.
you know, he clearly is, in my view, from the tone of his letters, it's, you know, he's looking for a fight, and he's, you know, he's being, and I think that we should respond appropriately, and so little,
You know what's frustrating is it seems like at least some of the things we could defend him, and we're not even allowed to. That's what, to me, is I sit here and I'm like, you know, if we were allowed to go out there, we could probably dispel, I don't know what percentage, I'm not gonna go there, but, you know, some of the,
Right.
you know, alleged violations, you know? And
I don't
he's
have,
not even letting us help him.
I don't even have to go on site. The fact is, this is not a normal functioning beach. It's obvious looking, and anybody who hasn't been out there, take a
Yeah, I would just
look.
prefer that, you know,
But you should,
the owner would be on board with
Yeah.
it, that's all. That's really the, you know, I mean,
no, you should make a site visit
yeah.
and document this.
All right, so I'm sorry, Courtney,
no, I mean, I just,
Kevin?
yeah.
I guess I've fallen with Court. Based on, first off, either he's a very good writer, or these are all written by his attorney, which I suspect it's his attorney.
Well, maybe he's the attorney.
Well, maybe he's the attorney, I don't know. But I think it's, our staff has had a difficult time getting access to the site. And it's clear that he is not interested in coming in. And I think meeting him the end of August he's just gonna say, I'll behave or whatever it is, and we'll be meeting him again next summer. But I'm just cynical.
You let him finish?
I will. I'm waiting until you call on me.
Go ahead.
I think he should be required to restore it back to a natural beach. And the areas that, where Ammophila was buried should be replanted with Ammophila, and that should be allowed to turn into dune, which is what it wants to turn into.
So I think at this point, before you have a discussion of what you want him to do, are you going to continue it until July 10th? I think that's the.
Could you reach out to Frank between now
Yes,
and then?
I can reach out to Frank between now and July. I think the prudent thing to do was, Jamie's gonna attempt to reach out to him one more time. I'll reach out to Frank. We'll try to gain access to the site. It's gonna be difficult before July 10th, but we'll try. And we'll see what we can do. Draft something up tomorrow.
That's what I'm really suggesting. We need to understand what our options are and what is the best way to proceed.
Your options are this: you can issue an enforcement order.
No, I understand we
I mean,
can.
Straight up. I mean, you
But,
have every right
We already
to.
issued one.
I'm sorry?
We already issued one, didn't we?
No, you issued the Dune one years ago, and that he,
Also,
to our knowledge, has not touched the Dune again. But he still hasn't repaired some of the issues that he was supposed to. So there is still an outstanding enforcement order that has not been closed out yet.
I make a motion to continue to
July
July
12th?
10th.
July 10th, okay.
10th.
I second.
Can we let, do you guys wanna?
Nope.
Okay, I'd try to be fair.
I think we ought to see the site before July 10th, if at all possible.
Okay.
I'm gonna try.
Legal or, well,
Well, we can
yes,
go to
with
the
his
abutting
permission.
property, right?
Yes, you can go on the abutting property.
You can see it from the road.
But you can go mean-high water.
Fishing, fouling, and navigating. Stay on another property.
So.
I still think it's part of that, it's the principle of it that
Correct.
he should just let us, you know what I mean?
Well,
All right,
and
so-
I just want to, I mean,
Go
we
ahead.
should vote this, but I just have a question. And that is, if we're a regulatory commission, and this property is subject to an enforcement order, how can he prevent us from going on his property?
Well, I think he has an open order condition, so that allows us
Correct.
access.
Let's try to do it in a positive way if we
That's
can.
what I'm
Well,
saying.
Thank you. I mean, that's what we've been talking, that's what, you
Yeah.
know,
So let's see,
yeah. So, I think this is the way to go.
Basically, I was told I am not allowed on the property. You are not allowed on my property. You are not allowed on my property. I am legally allowed on the property, but I'm not going to poke the bear.
Does that
so
extend to commissioners?
It was,
Well-
I was told,
Again, I'd really like to do it.
Jennifer McKay was told.
Okay, so, I think it makes sense to do that, do the continuance, we try to get there before the 10th, and then if he doesn't wanna play ball, then he's kinda forced our hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to continue until July 10th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Correct.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, ma'am.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
no, they're gonna be 26.
I thought Courtney moved it.
No, I made the motion. Who seconded the?
I did.
Yep, there we go.
All right, that's